Welcome, welcome. What an amazing morning. And welcome to the Saunders College of Business 16th Annual Power Your Potential Conference. Let's clap it up. I am just so excited to see such wonderful and beautiful faces gathered in this room this morning. And you know how I know it's going to be a good day? Because the sun is shining. I think you all brought in the sunshine. I'm convinced of this. Thank you for being here today. I am Crystal Ellis, founder and chief culture analyst of Ellis K Consulting. I am also the executive director of the Women's Foundation of Genesee Valley. I also serve as the proud 2025 RIT Minette Professor. Today, I will be your mistress of ceremonies. I'm just so excited. Can I tell you what this moment means? Years ago, when I lived in sunny South Florida, my father said, it's time to get serious. And I said, okay. You know, when you live in South Florida, you're kind of a little wild child. And I believed him, and he said, you need to come to this place called Rochester, New York. And I said, absolutely. So I've never visited before, and I got on the airplane, and I got here during May, and I was like, wow, delightful. The lilacs were out. The tulips were coming out of the ground. I was like, is this like something out of the Secret Garden? And then we're coasting through fall, and I said, yeah, this is okay. We're all right. And then we get to winter. And it was quite an experience. But it wasn't harsh enough to push me away because I am still here. And the beauty of this moment is that I came into myself here at RIT. I am a proud alum. And I found my voice, I found my people, and I found my tribe. And it is because women like you have helped to pave the way for others. So this is why today is so important to me. And it should be important to you because someone have paved the way for you to sit in the seat where you are today. At this moment, allow me to share a video to help us honor the native lands that this expansion and all of RIT are built on.
We begin this ceremony by acknowledging that the land on which we gather is the traditional territory of the Unandawaka, or the people of the Great Hill. In English, they are known as Seneca people, the keepers of the Western Door. Together with the Mohawk, Oneida, Onondaga, Cayuga, and Tuscarora, the Seneca make up the sovereign Haudenosaunee Confederacy. We honor and respect the enduring relationship that exists between these peoples and nations and this land. Yahweh.
Today, we will bring to you an amazing roster of speakers and panelists that will provide inspiration and insights for Rise Together Women Empowering Women. I encourage you all to view their bios. Please do. It is incredible. I was blown away when I was reading bios. I'm like, these are some cool cats and kittens. Sharing their stories, tips and tricks, advice. They have just specialized and dominated the world. These are world changers. With years of experience in leadership roles, we hope that you find personal wisdom from their successes and also from their tribulations. Let their discussions and presentations spring new ideas in you on how to embrace your personal abilities and great potential. I would like to start off by thanking our sponsors who made today possible. We have an exciting agenda planned out, but first, please join us for thanking this year's supporting sponsors, First American Equipment Finance and Palmer's Food Service, for their generous support. Let's hear about our sponsors. First American Equipment Finance serves middle market and investment grade organizations throughout the U.S., focusing on technology hardware and software solutions and infrastructure improvements. Headquartered in Fairport, New York, First American is ranked among the 100 largest leasing companies in the U.S. and is a subsidiary of City National Bank. As a company that stands for building a business with passion and professionalism, we thank you for your partnership with this event. Thank you for all that you do. Our next sponsor for today is Palmer's Food Service. Palmer's Food Service is a fifth-generation, family-owned and operated wholesale food distributor based in Rochester, New York. With 175 years in business and more than 300 employees, Palmer's is known for its commitment to quality, service, and supporting the communities it serves. Let me tell you about how much I love Palmer's. You get my money all the time. Let me tell you something. You ever had those days where you're like, I need to eat something healthy? And you're driving around town, and you go and you look at a drive-thru, you're like, nope, I'm gonna make some good decisions today. And so Palmer's Food Services is a part of my good decisions plan, because I pull in, I walk in there and the scent hits you, you're like, yeah. Then you go over to the seafood area and you look at those nice fresh scallops and you know it's going to be a great day. So thank you so much, Palmer's, for being such a gift to our community and a gift to my health and our health. So we have a few housekeeping items before we get the party started. Bathrooms are located outside the doors to your left. So when you come out, you just do a quick left and you go around the roundabout and you will find restrooms there. For Q&A sessions, please wait for the microphone to be brought over to you. During our breaks, make sure you connect with these wonderful ladies to get some wisdom from them, ask them some questions. That's why they're here. Make sure to share your business cards, connect on LinkedIn, and share an email address or two. Once you have done this, tear off the bottom of your mix and mingle sheet. There's a little bottom section here. It's perforated. And drop it in the jar for your chance to win the Power Your Potential gift basket, which you will see outside. The basket is, as the kids say, is basketing. They told me, my kids, they're like, Mom, you're kind of cringe. And I was like, okay. So I use it more just to traumatize them. The basket includes a gift card to the Siren and Sea Book and Coffee Shop, the RIT Saunders branded coffee mug, you'll get that. Nobody Cares About Your Career book by Erica Ayers Baden, former CEO of Barstool Sports. Do One Thing Every Day That Inspires You Creativity Journal. Yes, love that. Simmer Pot Blend and car freshener from Flourish Co. Coffee is always available throughout the event, so please grab some. All right, so I'm going to ask you all to do me one favor. Take your phones out. Take your phones out. I'm also a singer, too. Not a good one, but I will serenade you today. Take your phones out, and I am going to ask you, if you came with someone, take a selfie. I'm going to give you a minute to do it. Take a selfie with them, or if you see a RIT logo somewhere, take a picture of that logo, take a picture of your book, and then I will ask you, I'm going to give you a minute to do it. Go ahead. Selfie it up. I want to make sure that everyone has a photo of today in their phones. Capture the curls, zoom in, capture the outfits, take a picture of the Essentials book. Let's go. Okay, I see what we have going on here. I like this. Oh, come on. I love this so, so much. Oh, here we go. Oh, let me do the other thing that the kids are cringed out about. You ready? Oh, wait, okay. Oh, yeah, I'm going to send this. I had to create an intentional moment for this, and let me tell you why I created an intentional moment for this. Have you ever been to an event and you're trying to take a selfie, but you don't want anyone to look at you? So you're like holding up your phone like this. You're like, and you know you want to do it, so hey, I wanted to create that moment for you. And with those wonderful photos and videos that you've just taken, please follow us on social media and post about today. And you can find us at RIT Business on Instagram. You can also find them on Facebook as well. So please take the time, post today, tag someone. If there are quotes that just moved you, what do? Just like bomb everyone on your timeline today, okay? Put the post and put at RIT Business, because everyone should be here. And if they aren't, they're missing out, but you're still sharing the wealth with what you're hearing today. So that is some good stuff. Now, for our keynote speaker. She's so cool. So cool. All right. So let's hear more about her. It gives me great pleasure to welcome Dr. Kelly Monahan as our keynote speaker today. Dr. Monahan is a globally respected expert on the future of work and a powerful voice for redefining leadership in times of change. An organizational psychologist and former research and executive leader at Meta, Upwork, Accenture, and Deloitte, Kelly has built her career challenging systems that limit human potential and advocating for workplaces that create opportunity rather than extract from it. As founder and CEO of Beyond the Desk, Kelly works with leaders who are ready to question outdated definitions of success and power. Oh, we need that. Her research and advisory work focuses on helping leaders claim their authority, lead with conviction, and shape organizations that reflect their values rather than force conformity to legacy norms. A TEDx speaker and national best-selling author of Essential, she is frequently quoted in media and has been featured in Harvard Business Review, Fortune, Forbes, Fast Company, Bloomberg TV, and Yahoo Finance. As I was moseying through the book, this stood out to me, and this is her section on practicing contextual competency. And I want to take a moment. It says, this recognition, and we're talking about contextual competency again, this recognition is essential for leaders because the difficulties encountered by their teams often stem from unique and challenging circumstances that must be understood and addressed, not just understood, but addressed to maintain the flywheel's momentum. Understanding another's context involves more than just empathy. It requires an active and ongoing effort to learn about and engage. I love that. Learn about and engage with the different realities, that affect team members' performance and well-being. That is so critical and life-changing, especially as leaders. How can we lead without understanding the different realities of others? Because our realities are our realities and they're real to us. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Kelly Monahan to the Power Your Potential Conference. She will be sharing her keynote on leading with conviction and humanity, unleashing the power of women leaders. Please give us a loud, just give us a roar. Yeah, because we are tigers, so are. A loud roar to Dr. Kelly Monahan. Thank you.
So much for that opening. My God, it was so kind. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Well, good morning. It is such a pleasure to be back. I graduated in 2007, so it feels like 20 years, and it's amazing to be back in this room. I am so excited as I look around, as I do keynotes, 75 to 80% of my audience is male. And so I am so excited as we look around this room, because as I think about systematic change, let's be real, I don't know if it's the men who are going to be able to do this, because the system has been set up for them. And so today, we're going to address some really hard truths about the system in which you're all working in, and how do we as women leaders actually begin to step up and embrace this time. So I'm coming in hot. I'm going to be honest with you. We're going to have some truth serum today. It's going to be a safe place, but we have to, right? The world is upside down. And usually what I say as an academic, I answer this very academic question over the next hour we have together. Is WTF is up with work? Does anyone else feel that? Is anyone else feeling exhausted, tired from the pandemic? No one wants to talk about it anymore, but as we come in, it's getting harder and harder to unleash our potential. And that's what I want to help do today, is really begin to show you the reality of what you're all facing to understand why it's so difficult. So I've been studying the future of work now for about 15 years. And one of the things I like to know is what's actually different today? What is actually a new reality that you're facing that many others have not before? So as the slides get pulled up, I'm going to tell you there's 5 things that are keeping executives up at night. And we're going to do some interaction, because what I want to know is, what year do you think this was said? So number one, the very first thing that executives said is it's really hard to retain and find good talent, the right talent that's needed. Sure, maybe there's a lot of people that want a job or want to work, but very few can actually find the right talent for the position. 2, technology is moving so fast. It's so hard to keep up as a leader. And not just that, the fear of job loss is rising at exponential rates, and it's distracting the workforce. Do I have any HR or L&D professionals in the room today? How are you guys feeling about your budgets going into 2026? Oftentimes, HR is one of the first budgets to get cut. And so one of the things keeping up executives up at night is we don't have enough budget in our L&D. We're not keeping pace with our workforce and the technology change. The 4th thing, and we're going to talk a lot about this today, Gen Z. Do I have any Gen Zers in the house today too? It's wonderful. I mean, unfortunately, what's keeping executives up at night is what's wrong with the next generation of workers. Why don't they want to work? And so we're going to talk a little bit about that, and we're going to explain that. And then finally, probably one of my favorites, and honestly part of the reason why Christy and I wrote Essential, is we have really strong technically trained managers, but when it comes to influencing the hearts and minds of people, we're missing it. They don't understand that. So let's really do some interaction to get started. I'm going to go to this side of the room. What year do you think this list was compiled? Feel free, you can just shout out. 2002. 2010. 2010? I feel like I'm running an auction when I do this. Yeah, go ahead. 80s, like it? 1990. We'll do one more answer from the side of the room. 95. Ladies, this is from 1955. And this is the challenge that I think is before us today, is we have not figured out the human component of business. And partly it may be because there's not enough of us in this room in higher levels of leadership to actually rewrite the system that's required to begin to course correct this problem. To me, this doesn't make sense, because we have technology moving at exponential rates. Technology is moving much faster than our organizations and as individuals we can keep up with. And when I was at Deloitte, we did some research to showcase how innovative technology has become. It is accelerating at exponential rates. But look at the rate of change and innovation when it does come to HR practices, when it does come to the way that we perceive leadership. We have to close the gap. And that's what I want to do, is help share with you how you can begin to close the gap, both as you as an individual leader, but also within your organizations. Because part of my message is to be a canary in the coal mine, to let you know the change that is coming with AI and AI agents is going to be profound. And this story matters to me a lot, because as we think about this, I actually started my career in HR. I thought HR is where we develop leaders, we engage the workforce. Like, if I wanted to be on the right side of business, I got to go into HR, and that's what I did. And I was at the Hartford, and it was coming out right out of the financial crisis, 07, 08, And there's this new technology called robotic process automation. Is everyone familiar with robotic process automation? It's a baby AI. Let's call it like the baby toddler version. And so I sat with our CFO and he said, you know what, Kelly? We figured out we don't need the back office anymore. We can use robotic process automation. We can save a lot of money. And your first assignment is to go lay off 200 people because they are now redundant because of the technology we're installing. And I thought, you've got to be kidding me. This is not why I got into HR. And so what I did at a pretty young age is actually had to go look at 200 people individually throughout a course of a 12-hour day and let them know they no longer have a job. And two things still haunt me to this day, nearly 15 plus years later. One is a woman returned the next day. IT forgot to turn off her badge, and she was back at her computer. And I said, I'm so sorry, Sandy, you need to exit the building. I mean, this is becoming a security issue. And she said to me, well, Kelly, I don't understand. I've been here for 25 years. How did you just flip off my work? I need to actually finish it. I don't think it's ready to hand off. It's still messy, and I want to fix that. And that message to me is people are so dedicated to do the right thing for business, and their identity is tied up into work. The second thing a woman came and told me as we were having the conversation, she said to me, now this robotic process automation, I've never heard of it, but if you guys knew about it, why didn't you tell me? Because you're sending me back out into a job market that I no longer have the technology skills required to actually go get another job. And so I've dedicated my entire career now to telling people what's about ready to happen, because what my concern is, what robotic process automation did to back offices is going to be pale in comparison to what AI is about ready to do to knowledge work jobs, something that we've never seen before. And I think we have the opportunity over the next year to 3 years to get this moment right and stay ahead of that curve. But to do so, we have to close that delta between how fast technology is advancing compared to how fast we're able to develop. And like I said, I want to bring some reality checks to this. I can't think of a worse time for a technology like AI to actually be coming onto the scene the way it is. Take a look at what's been happening over the last 2 years. So when I talk with executive leaders, they tell me all the time, like, Kelly, I just feel tired. I feel like the world has gotten more complicated. Like, is that true? 100%. If you were to be an executive leader 20 years ago, you could expect about 3 to 5 economic shocks in your entire career. You're talking about 5 in the last 24 months. And the problem is, I don't even know when I wake up the next day, I've got to always be checking my Apple News because there might be another economic shock I'm waking up to. And so as you begin to think through inflation, macroeconomic uncertainty, we even see the fragility in our banking systems and cybersecurity outages. AWS just had an outage 2 months ago and almost paralyzed an entire day of business. This is a problem. And so not only are you as leaders having to now stay ahead of the curve and keep up with AI, you have to navigate this. And it's not just you, this is what your workforce is feeling and seeing every single day. And I don't know about you, the majority of business leaders have not been trained how to handle this amount of complexity. And let's not forget, we just came out of the pandemic not that long ago. And we're all still tired and reeling from RTO, work from home, all these debates that turn the world upside down, a loneliness and mental health workforce epidemic. This is the reality before us in our times. And I think it's really important for us to understand this and acknowledge this and almost grieve that the world is never going back. This is our new reality. I'm not going to lie to you and tell you on stage, well, just let's give it 3 to 5 years, and you know what? I think we're going to go back to just like 3 to 5 shocks in your lifetime. No, if anything, this is going to continue to accelerate. And the question is, how do we build the muscle as leaders to actually navigate this? And what I find so perplexing is if we look at our organizational lifespans, we are the most arguably intelligent, mankind right now that has ever had more technology, more information, and yet our organizations are actually going out of business at faster rates. So back in the 1940s, if you were on the S&P 500, you were expecting to be there for 67 years. I mean, this is Rochester, New York. My parents worked at Kodak. There was a strong social contract around lifelong employment because organizations were staying in business long enough to do that. Today, the lifespan of a company in the S&P 500 is 15 years. Now, some of that is accelerated because of an increase in M&A work, mergers and acquisitions, but that doesn't explain that entire delta. So again, as women leaders, I think this is our opportunity to say, you know what, we need to take a time out. The way that we've designed our organizations, the way that we're leading today is not leading to success. This is not a success metric. And I think that is part of what we need to figure out is how do we rewire the system? Not saying that we're ever going to go back to 67 years, not that we're ever going to go back to lifelong employment, but we've got to start staying in business longer to provide more stability for our societies and our workforce. And so I've got a pretty simple message, and I don't know if this resonates or not, but I think we've lost the plot, both as probably as a broader society, but definitely when it comes to business. You know, a question I have for you is, what is the purpose of business? What is the value of business? Now, if you're trained classically in an MBA, they're going to tell you it's shareholder wealth maximization. That is what the purpose of business is. But I'd like us to imagine something a little bit broader than that, and actually something that my education here at RIT taught me, which was much stronger in thinking about stakeholders. And how do we actually do more than just create profit, but actually leave a legacy? Make sure that we have enough jobs for the young people coming in, making sure that we get this moment of AI right, and how do we actually begin to regain the plot of what work is all about? And so as we think about this, I want to tell you a story of how easy it is to lose the plot. Now, this is Captain Jacob. Captain Jacob in the 1970s was a leading aviation expert. He was the guy that you called if something was going wrong in the aviation industry, he's the one that you wanted on site. He actually wrote the manual for much of the safety requirements today. But here's the problem. It was not business as usual. Much like all those economic shocks that we just saw, he was facing a similar situation. He was supposed to be flying to London, but there was a bomb threat. And so he got rerouted to the island of Tenerife. Now, Tenerife was a really small island back in the, still is a small island, but the runways and everything were really small back in the 70s. There was no hotel, no restaurants, there was nowhere for the passengers to go. And not just that, Captain Jacob had just instituted a new industry standard of mandatory rest periods. He had 1 hour to get back up in the air, or else an entire plane would be grounded with over 200 passengers for 12 hours. And he's looking around and there's nowhere to go. And to make matters worse, a storm begins rolling into Tenerife, so he can't see. And so we all, in many ways, as business leaders, have ended up in Tenerife. We're looking around, we have gotten rerouted, their storm seems to be brewing. And what Captain Jacob did in this moment is so easy to do when we've lost the plot of what it's all about because of the complexity and the anxiety and the stress that we have. So in that moment, Captain Jacob was really anxious to take off. He stopped listening to his first officer. He stopped actually sensing the environment around him. He became very hierarchical and command and control. His first officer in the control tower are telling him he does not have clearance to take off. But in that moment, he decides to take off, and he crashes into another 747 that was sitting on the runway. Over 550 people lost their lives that day. Captain Jacob should have went down. His entire career was built on making the airline industry safer. But in that moment, because of the complexity, because of the compounding stress he was under, he made a poor leadership decision. And that's the question that we have today is, how do we navigate these times and have a different legacy and not become Captain Jacob? Because that's our default mode. When we are under stress, when we are not necessarily operating at our best, these are the signals to look at. And I'll be curious how much this represents the organizations you're working in today. Very first thing that starts to happen is centralized decision making. You know what? I'm just going to do it. I hear leaders say all the time. It's just faster for me to do it. I'm going to just take the decision. I'm going to take the ball. I'm going to run with it. We stop actually giving, delegating authority. 2, we become really risk adverse. Like, it's really hard to take a risk right now because the future is so uncertain. And the one thing that my research has shown is right now only 1 in 4 organizations going into 2026 have any sort of innovation strategy in place. Most are actually trying to just preserve and protect what they have. But this moment actually requires innovation, but it's really hard to do. The third thing is I've never seen in my 20-year career so much emphasis on cost reduction. Most companies today are operating in a low to no growth environment. And so again, rather than innovating, they're hedging down, not taking risk, and they're trying to cut costs. You see it every day in the news right now, the number of layoffs that are occurring as people try to get costs out of their business. Again, back to my HR L&D professionals, learning becomes deprioritized. This is not the moment to learn. We need to move with efficiency and speed. The average worker today is learning 4 minutes a week. That is not enough to keep pace with the change. Fifth thing to look out for is human consequences become minimized. As we're beginning to make decisions within our organizations, as economists and as leaders, we tend to call these externalities, where we write them off as a cost to the balance sheets when we're really harming humans. That's, again, another signal that we're beginning to drift and lose the plot. And then finally, control is exerted. Because so much is uncertain, there's control. And one of the things I'm hearing from executive leaders in almost every industry is, I don't know why, but we're operating under so much fear all of a sudden. There's just a sense of fear and angst as we're walking into the workplace. How many of you would say that this sort of resembles a little bit of current working conditions today, of how they're experiencing? Yeah. Very common and normal given the conditions that are before us. But the problem is this has a consequence. If we continue to operate in this default mode, this is the consequence. And I've never seen data like this in my life. Only 30% of the current workforce today aspires to be sitting in leadership positions, aspires to be you in the room today. 30%. Those of you in HR, that is a pipeline crisis that we're having in the majority of organizations today. And the reason is people are looking around and saying, that job's not worth it. I don't want that responsibility. I don't want to hold all of that. And this is a problem. And as soon as people stop aspiring for leadership is where we begin to get apathy and where we begin to not necessarily see a lot of the traits that we need in business. And I think something that really kind of keeps me up at night is this last stat here. 70% of executives today and leaders don't think they're handing off the organization better off than when they inherited it. And that to me is troubling. We've never seen stats like this before. These are usually reversed, where 70% of people want to be leaders and about 30% of leaders say, you know what, I probably am leaving this a little bit worse off. And so that's the challenge before us in our time today is how do we begin to reverse these numbers? How do we begin to make leadership something that people aspire to? And how do we make sure as you are working your entire career that you actually feel like you've made impact and you've made your business better, not worse, because of your leadership? And on top of this, there's new rules coming to the way people are going to work because of AI. So let me ask this. How many of you today are using ChatGPT or some version? Okay. 2 years ago, it was about 50% of the room. How many of you are using AI agents? Okay, it's great. And how many of you are using like digital avatars, anything like that? Because I think that's going to be some of the next wave. Okay, so that represents very similar what I see. Now, here's the thing. ChatGPT is great, and like some of the early agent stuff is really beginning to come up. But I worked at Meta. I worked a lot when I was at Upwork with OpenAI and got to see a little bit behind the scene of what's actually coming, or at least aspiring to come in the next year or two. Now, if generalized intelligence continues to track the way that Sam Altman and all these other folks hope it does, the world's going to turn upside down pretty quickly in knowledge work. But let's be frank for a minute. We've already turned the world upside down back in the 80s and 90s in blue-collar work, and we were okay with that in many ways. We don't seem to be as okay with it coming for white-collar jobs. So let's just acknowledge that reality and learn and do better as we come to this time. But I think as a leader, these are the new rules I want you to understand are happening within organizations, because everyone always asks me, Kelly, how do I future-proof my career? It's getting really clear about these rules. Number one, you are all sitting in the spot that you are today because you have expertise. We're here in college. I went to 10 years of education. But the reality is, and something that's very humbling is, AI can take my 10 years of college education and with the right training in minutes have very similar knowledge. So what does that mean for us as leaders? Knowledge is no longer our power. We have to think beyond that. We have to think about actually let's talk about the feminine energy and traits that we have, ethics, human judgment, empathy, all of those things become at the forefront of what you have to master as a leader because your expertise is no longer enough. Second, this hasn't been true for a while, but it's going to be even more true with AI. Hierarchy no longer assures speed. We have to rewrite the organizational chart because AI can move information at much faster rates and make decisions alongside humans much faster than our org chart. And that's kind of what we're going to talk a little bit about soon is Gen Z, why they're moving at a different rate and think our organizations are so upside down. I'm not going to lie, I don't know if predictability was ever possible, but as working with economists, we felt pretty good about being able to predict the labor markets a good year or two in advance. Many of you have been following all of the government reporting on labor markets. We have no clue what's happening anymore. The amount of corrections that are happening, the predictability is no longer possible. Like we are living in a world where there's too many unknown variables that are influencing decisions. And so our best that we can do is continue to sense and stay ahead of it. Fourth thing with AI, I saw almost 100% of the room raise their hands about ChatGPT. Who can clearly explain how ChatGPT is giving you the output it gives you every day? Anyone? It's a black box. We have some idea, but the reality is, even me as someone who's been studying this for a long time, I don't know what OpenAI is doing behind the scenes from our parameters. I don't have foresight into that. I don't know what Meta Llama is doing as it's tuning and tweaking its model. We just have to acknowledge that the majority of what we're understanding from a AI perspective is a black box. And so that means transparency is no longer going to come from oversight. Something else has to shift. And I think maybe one of the scariest things that's about ready to happen is decision-making is no longer human. Even if you have, I talk with organizations all the time, and CEOs tell me, okay, no, Kelly, we've got a really good governance program in place. We have compliance. We make sure everything that we do is like in the box. I said, you know what? My research shows me that 50% of your workforce is actually using a personal ChatGPT to actually get answers and move faster. And so the reality is, how do we think about decisions and who's accountable and who's responsible when it's no longer just humans making decisions? And my prediction is a little bit of a hot take, is I actually think there's going to be a calamity that's going to happen in the next year or so because organizations are moving so fast and putting AI in at all these different decision points. And what my concern is most leaders don't realize the best large language model today, the very best, still has about an 8 to 10% error rate and hallucination rate. Where is you as a business leader comfortable having 8 to 10% hallucination or error rate in any sort of true decision making? And that's part of the questions we have to grapple with today. We also used to operate as organizations as closed systems. We're like really protective of IP. We would have boundaries of our work. If you are connected on the cloud and you are connected to any sort of AI model, you are no longer a closed system. You are operating in an open system, and that changes the economics of how we create value in business and how we think about collaboration. And I think the hardest one for most leaders is this last one. Smaller teams are going to win in the future. When I was at Meta, Facebook, part of how we promoted leaders was I called them building territories. The bigger your team was, the more people that you had underneath you, the higher up you went in the org chart. I think that's going to get flipped upside down. I'm going to tell you a brutal truth. AI is going to eliminate quite a few jobs. And I think the leaders who begin to get this right and get promoted are going to be those who can understand how to extract more value of people working alongside of AI. And so I think we're going to have to continue to track this because, again, this changes how we lead today. It's much more around human AI collaboration that you're leading than just building continuous teams of people. And what I implore people to do today is that harsh reality means that we have to have a plan today in place. If we expect 15, 20% workforce disruption by 2030, what are we doing today to prepare those people and making sure that we've got alternative career pathways to keep people employed? So this is tough, and I acknowledge that this is not always the easiest thing to absorb and understand, but my fear is if we look away from this harsh reality, we will become a victim to what's happening and not staying in control and really beginning to unleash the potential that we have because of these new rules of leadership. And here's the problem. You saw this back in 1955. It's happening even at mass today. Because of these new rules, because of this new reality, almost no organization is getting the training and skilling program in place to get this moment right. 40% of executives told me in my research, they have no clue what the AI skills are in their organization. They don't even know what they are, how to measure them. They don't really know what this looks like. And only about 1 in 4 organizations today actually have a formal AI skilling program. How many of you are working in organizations that have a formal AI skilling program? 2, 3? This is a problem. If we know the reality of where this technology is going, and we talked about that gap very early on, how technology is accelerating, this is not helping us close that gap. This is where we need to actually spend a lot more time. And listen, as women leaders, we can't wait for the system to figure this out. We have to do this with our own self-ambition and our own individuality. Like, this is something that we have to go do. We cannot wait for the system and our organizations to catch up. And as a result of not having really that human development side of this right, 50% of workers today are really fearful. Like, the majority of the workers today are fearful of job loss, and organizational leaders are saying, you know what? I don't know what the ROI is on this technology. Board members right now are telling CEOs they have got to find ROI in 2026 because guess what? AI ain't cheap. It's costing a lot of money, all those Copilot license, the energy investments. And so there's a lot of pressure right now to cut cost in order to show that ROI. And I think part of this, and I'm gonna, hopefully you guys will have these slides as a takeaway. I think part of what we're missing today that I just, again, I want to speak some truth to, is I don't think we have the proper lanes assigned to human intelligence and artificial intelligence. There's so much about us that is so unique and so important that we maintain and preserve. And to me, this is almost a preservation moment for us as women leaders too. As we think about human intelligence, that's something that AI can never do. We are really good at understanding current events and understanding the context. AI is only learning on what is actually on the World Wide Web and what has occurred in the past. So let me give you a perfect example of what happened. So we all know that we started off this year, as turbulent as ever, and when the situation happened in Venezuela, a bunch of the workforce went to start trying to get real-time information on what has happened, where's the president of Venezuela, why was he captured, all this information, just general intelligence. The AI models said, nothing has occurred, you are hallucinating, and US and Venezuela have great diplomatic relations. And we laugh at that, but that is the reality of AI is not necessarily your real-time current friend. But most people don't necessarily know that. And so my phone was ringing off the hook that morning, because I do a lot of labor market research, of like, Kelly, what's going on with this AI models? Why is this telling me this is happening? And it's because there hasn't been enough new words on the internet to showcase that the knowledge has been updated, and that's the risk that we run if we don't understand this. The second thing is, we as humans, we do judgment. We understand values, we understand novelty, we sense with our eyes and our heart and our head. AI is an amoral machine. It is based on statistical parameters. It's a bunch of 22 and 23-year-old software engineers out in the Bay Area tweaking statistical models to figure out what we as humans want to receive and hear. That's alarming to me, and I don't know if that's alarming to you. And so I think we have to remember that as much as this might, my sister has it tuned to be her bestie, it is not your bestie. It does not necessarily have your best interest in mind. At the end of the day, these are for-profit capitalistic companies who want to command our attention and get us addicted to these technologies. We've seen this play out time and time again. So again, we as women leaders need to stay ahead of this and understand our lane so we can design work and really master the potential that we have in that human lane and not the AI lane. And the last thing I want to say about this, because a lot of people don't know this, is as we think about the output that AI is giving you today, it is trained on what I call the dominant discourse, or the average answer, what the average wants to hear. How many of you want to be average? How many of you want to lead an average workforce? I don't think many of us. But yet, if we're not careful and if we do not preserve our human intelligence at such a time as this, we risk being tuned to the average. And I think that would be a great travesty of our time. Now, let's also get real when it comes to women with this topic. Right now, take a look. Women comprise only 22% of the AI talent today. We are horribly underrepresented when it comes to actually building and dictating this technology. This is a travesty, because here's the problem. We all know women have caught up with STEM education. We have the computer science degrees. We have the knowledge, but yet something is missing and we're not going into this. And if you look at the senior executive roles, less than 14% of executives at these AI companies are being led by women. And that's what I fear, is we will end up having the wrong decision making, because we all know, this has been proven with science, this is not a political statement, that when women are in the room, when we are at the table and having a voice, and especially women of color having a voice at the table, business decision making is better. We lead to better outcomes. And that's what I'm fearful of, that we don't have today. It's true. And so as part of this, this is the other thing I just want to wake up call for. Guess what jobs AI is coming for by 2030? The jobs that women hold today. We are overrepresented in the jobs in which AI might excel at. And this is a problem, is how do we make sure you as a leader in this room and the women that you are leading in your workforce are prepared for this so that they are not being disrupted. We cannot lose any more women in the workforce. The pandemic did us no service. After the pandemic, we have a less women representation in high-paying jobs than ever before. And that's because most women had to go back to caregiving roles. Children were at obviously being educated from home, things changed upside down, and they did not re-enter back into the workforce. And so as we think about this, we have to understand not only are we not there designing the technology, we are also the ones most likely to be disrupted by this technology. And if that doesn't motivate you to want to do something about this, I don't know what else will. And so I want to be really frank of when I say you need to develop AI skills, what exactly that means. Because LinkedIn right now, the #1 job posting they have is for AI skills. No one knows what they are. No one knows what that means. Here's the 3 things that I want you as women to excel in. #1, you need strong domain expertise. I told you AI is still hallucinating 8 to 10% of the time. If you are not an expert in your domain, you will be found out. Because AI will give you a wrong answer at some point in time, and if you don't necessarily have that expertise, you will not be able to catch it. So stay strong in your domain. #2, everyone has to have a command of statistics and data analytics today. AI runs on statistics and probabilities. It's as simple as that. I don't know how many of you in the room have an understanding of statistics, but that is something that you want to double down on, and you need to know where the data is in your organization. Like, you want to get aggressive right now with your leaders of, tell me about the data in our organization. I want to play around with it for a bit. I want to be able to use this with AI. Make sure the women on your team are understanding the data side of AI within your organization. Too often that is being held within data analytics teams that are primarily men. And then finally, there's so much to know of whether or not, do you build your own AI agent that's going to be coming up soon? Do you buy an agent? What do? You should understand the ecosystem. There's thousands of AI tools out there today. 90% of people use ChatGPT, but there's better tools and more tools. If you're a marketer, there's certain tools that you should be understanding and learning. If you're a copywriter, if you're in HR. So what I ask you to do is think about, become an expert in what are the tools in your expertise, in your domain. Figure out, should I be actually buying that tool or should I actually be building it? It's been gotten so easy from a democratization perspective. And these are the 3 things. I'm really confident of all my research. If you can do these 3 things well, you're going to be fine. The future is actually bright. But I don't know how much of your day is being spent developing these 3 things today. And so, as we think through, I think this has great consequences. So I want to just spend a quick second here on Gen Z. 47% of Gen Zers today would rather use AI than talk to a human leader when it comes to coaching and development. I think we have a human relating problem in our organizations. I think as leaders, we've gotten tired. I think we have so many fire drills that we have to put out every day. I think the world has turned upside down, that we don't really know what way is up, and we don't have time to coach young people anymore. And I don't know about you, I'm really excited about what AI can automate. I don't want it automating human leadership. I want it automating your emails, I want it automating your calendar, I don't want it automating the way that we develop the next generation of workers. And here's part of the problem of why Gen Z is going there. Only 48% of Gen Zers actually think business is having a positive impact on society today. The majority think business has gone astray, that it's lost its plot, and that we're causing harm, not good in society. And I don't know about you, but I really believe that business is a force for good if used appropriately. Cost of living and unemployment is really top concerns right now, and they don't think that the majority of us understand or get that. And if you ask me who I'm worried about the most in the workforce today, both ends of the spectrum. I'm really worried about Gen Z. They're having a hard time getting into the workforce, and I'm really worried about executive leaders because they're so burned out. These are the 2 ends that are struggling. And let's be honest, I'm an elder millennial, and we got accused of wanting our avocado toast and, wanting, beer keg in the offices, all that stuff. And we got some of that. Here's the reality of why Gen Z has some angst coming into the workforce. Look at these stats. Average price of goods and services over a 30-year period is 567%. That's our benchmark. Look at the price of a house and the price of education. This is why it doesn't make sense to go to college anymore is becoming a true question, especially if AI is going to begin to automate some of that white-collar work. We've got to start figuring this out. And I think the hard truth is, if we really want to get honest, executive pay during that time has been able to keep up because of stock options and bonuses. Average workforce pay over that 30-year period, 24%. And so what Gen Z is saying right now is, hey, you know what, at least your generations had hope. Like, you could put in your time, you could climb up the career ladder. Maybe as millennials, we went as fast as we wanted. We had to hop around a bit to figure it out. But there is no pathway right now. And I think one of the most alarming things, Susie Welsh, who is the wife of the former late Jack Welsh, is studying this at NYU. And so when she interviews Gen Z, here's what she's hearing. She's hearing things like, I don't know if the planet's going to be around in another 30 years. Why save for a 401k? I'm not sure. I think we actually should be preparing for World War III. I'm not sure this is the time necessarily to really figure other things out. The mentality and the mindset is so different because of the world in which they're facing, and they don't see the economic opportunity to actually get the house, to get the car, 2 cars, all that things that we just assume are going to happen. And I think this has great consequences. And so I want to start closing us out because I think there's a path forward. I know I'm pretty good at probably, having some demise and despair happen, but there is a path forward here, and I want to spend the last 5 minutes before we go into Q&A talking about this. Because how many of you know who this is? Captain Sully, right? How many of you would consider him a hero of our time, right? He made a miracle landing in the Hudson. He also didn't have business as usual. A flock of birds came into his engine jets at about 10,000 feet. There was no playbook. And as much as Captain Jacob was a hero, well, okay, it's fine. As much as, we're gonna go with it. As much as Captain Jacob was a hero, there's a few things the aviation industry redesigned that he had a leg up that Captain Jacob didn't. So the first thing is, anyone in the aviation industry has to go through crew resource education management. And you know what they figured out after Captain Jacob's disaster? It wasn't a lack of technicality or technical skills. It was a lack of leadership and interpersonal skills. That's what created the disaster. I guarantee you pilots today have more education on leadership and interpersonal skills than most of us leading a business today. That's how important that moment became. Number 2, they looked around at the runways around the world. They were too short. There was no room for error or mistakes or slack in the system. So what did? They extended the runways to make it better for humans. And then third, they redesigned the cockpit. What they realized in a moment of crisis, pilots behaved differently. Instead of pulling up, they were pulling down. And yet that was what partly caused the disaster as well. And so they redesigned the cockpit to understand not how people perform during times of normal as usual, but actually during times of crisis. And that changed everything. And so there's 3 things that I want to leave you with as you think about how do we begin to even tackle the system change that's required. And I want you to own these as individual leaders first, and then think about how you apply them to your teams. Number 1, I want you to treat human judgment like it's a safety skill today. How many of you have gone through training on wisdom? Anyone? People usually laugh when I say that. It's not a word we use in business. But why not? We need wisdom today more than anything else. We need human and ethical judgment. We need to understand what is AI in its lane, what is a deep fake, what is real, what is not. We need more than ever to understand what is uniquely human and how we preserve that. I think Toyota is a great example of this. We know that they, and their front lines, if there's a problem, every person has access to a button to stop the lines, to say, you know what, there's a mistake, something is not right. Is your frontline workforce empowered in your organizations to have that same judgment? Oftentimes we've taken that away from those actually closest to the friction point or problem. And so my question is, where is the wisdom training? How do you as a leader make sure that you are preserving what is uniquely human in this moment? Second thing is, everyone wants to move faster, everyone wants efficiency, but I want everyone to slow down and really begin to rework this learning muscle. We have to bring this back to work. So let me give you a quick story. AT&T, obviously had went through tremendous transformation. They had to take people that were working on the telephone lines and really begin to pivot them to the cloud. AT&T was in a kind of a financial disaster situation, and they didn't have any budget for external hiring. They had to take their existing workforce and figure out, how do I take line men and women and actually move them into cloud-based computer roles? Here's what the CEO did. He installed Legos in the break room, little buckets of Legos everywhere with some activities. And he told those workers, and he said, every week I want you to spend at least 30 minutes in this break room playing with Legos. And they all laughed at him. And they said, this is a waste of time. Like, I want to go home. I want to do X, Y, Z. But what he was telling them is learning is prioritized here. We need to make fun and play happen again in the workforce. Because there's a great transformation and change, and that muscle is not necessarily being built. So my question to you is, where are the Lego rooms in your home and within your organizations? What is signaling to the workforce that it is actually the moment right now is to play and learn with AI? than anything else. And what I worry about as I go into all these corporations and organizations, no one's thinking about this. Everyone's telling me, Kelly, I want better KPIs. I want to move faster. I want to make sure that I've got greater efficiency. That's the antithesis to what we actually need right now, which is learning. And then finally, is I want us to really think about how to redesign work with human AI behavior. So before the elevator was invented in the 1880s, do you know about how tall buildings were? Any guesses? 3 stories? Yeah, it was about 5 stories. Was like, if you wanted to have an office building or some sort of nature of that back in the day, in the 1880s. The elevator came. We all know Otis invented the elevator. And so what that allowed architects to do is reimagine the entire experience of how we build buildings. And what my fear is, I think AI is the elevator of our time within knowledge work and organizations. But what I see executives and leaders so excited about is how quickly we can now go back and forth to 5 stories. Of like, oh my God, we can now go what used to take us 10 minutes to walk up the stairs, we can now do so fast with AI. Instead, what I want us to imagine is, how do we begin to build skyscrapers? That is what the elevator actually unlocked, was not to move with speed, but actually to build bigger and reimagine something different. And so to me, as you're thinking about AI, are you using AI just to move faster and just to making sure you're staying at that 5th floor, there's that ceiling there? Or are you actually reimagining is what does that skyscraper look like that you now can architect? And I think that's the moment of our time is we as women know the system's broken. I don't think I have to convince you of that. We have all felt the effects of what the system of work is. My question now is to put on the hard hat and we as a community begin to work together and figure out what are the new blueprints that we need for work and leadership. Because right now I'm seeing too much of just 5-story building architect designs as I go and work with leaders. I'm looking for the leaders who are willing to go and explore and build skyscrapers. And I think that is actually what Gen Z is demanding of us from this moment. And so as we wrap up and get to Q&A, I want to leave you with these 3 questions. And they are meant to be somewhat existential in nature because I do think we're at a moment in our time of this. Number 1, as women leaders, what is the value you are creating? I don't want to know about your to-do list. I don't want to know about how many things you're getting done on behalf of others in the organization. I want to know for you, what value are you going to actually create as you go into work every day? Number 2, what behaviors are you normalizing? The world's upside down. The workforce has never been more polarized. And we're seeing behaviors become normalized that are not okay in our workforce. We have decided that DEI is all of a sudden a political issue. As I said before, we need to normalize that diversity leads to better outcomes, and that's not something to shy away from. That's something to be doubling down on right now. What behaviors are we going to normalize? What are we going to tolerate out of leaders, of how we behave to one another, how we communicate, what we discriminate against? This is the moment that Gen Z is looking at us because they know what's happening. You can go on TikTok, and I have so much hope that they understand, as you were saying before, they understand the cringe of what we've all created and developed, and it's time to step beyond that and really think about, I don't care what the politics say, I don't care what the rest of the world says, but from human to human, what is the right thing to do in this moment? And we cannot lose sight of that. And then finally, AI is going to outlive us all. And so my question is, what side of history are you going to be on as we use these tools? This is a powerful tool we all have in our hands, and it's the wild, wild west. Will you use AI to disrupt the workforce and automate a bunch of jobs, and that's the legacy that we're going to have, and we're going to be so excited that shareholders made another $5 each quarter? Or are we going to use this to actually go build skyscrapers and reinvent the way that we work to create more inclusive organizations, to make sure that Gen Z is not getting left behind as we begin to remove entry-level roles, and really take this as women leaders as our time and our moment to own what AI is going to look like in our organizations? And so as we get ready, we can get the mic runners ready for Q&A. I want to leave you with this quote from the book. It's actually probably one of my favorite statements we make. I think it's so often we can think of ourselves as Captain Jacob. You probably have all created wonderful legacies up to this point. You are wonderful experts. But this moment's different. We are in Tenerife. And so the question is, what will your legacy be when you're in a Tenerife moment? And what I hope and what I implore for you is that it's not just developing better products or better services, but we are the ones at this moment that stand up for humanity in our workforce. That is the challenge before us, is not to continue to innovate new products and new services. That's business as usual. That's great. But what we actually desperately need is women leaders who are willing to be bold and courageous and impact people differently so that we can all come through on the other side of this moment. And so with that, I'd love to invite, as we have about 10 minutes or so of Q&A, I know this was a lot of information, of anything that's burning top of mind, anything you want to challenge. This is a safe place for us as women leaders and form a community to really begin to problem solve in real time some of the things I've just challenged you with. What's top of mind? What's maybe not settling right, and or something that gets you excited as you think about the new realities before us? Yep. Or yeah, however, I'll let you decide.
I have two questions.
Okay.
The first question is, when you say that you're working with leadership and they're engineering a fifth floor
Yeah.
business model, and you tell them, actually, you need to build a skyscraper. So when they hear you saying that, I'm assuming you're giving them specific advice to change. Like, are they receptive? And have you seen anyone that's able to implement change?
Yep.
In a positive way? And then I have a second question. Maybe you can answer
Okay.
that one first.
It's a great question. So context matters greatly. Obviously, what a skyscraper is going to look like in your organization or you depends on your resource constraints, your personal trade-offs. You have to make all of those things. But when I talk to leaders I was just with a financial services company, and that is going to be highly disrupted by AI. And I was with their executive team actually just a couple days ago. And so what they're trying to reimagine is the fifth floor ceiling is doing work the exact same way, but just delivering more emails that are personalized, more noise, I would say, in the system is really what AI can allow us to do. You probably all have heard the word AI slop. And so their question is, how do we actually get to 2030 and minimize any sort of layoffs, and what do those people now do? What are the new customer needs we can now fulfill? What are the new markets we can go into? What are some of the new products that weren't available before that we didn't have enough of the computing power to actually deliver on? And so for them, it's, hey, if we know our board is telling us, real life example, we need to cut 25% of the workforce by 2030 to pay off these AI investments, how do we not do that and instead repurpose them so our revenue has grown instead because of the AI investment? And so that's part of a lot of the conversations we're getting into. I will tell you, no executive leader wants to lay off their workforce. Like, that is not the goal here. Everyone does want to innovate and reinvent. They're just limited right now by the imagination because of all the pressure that people are under. And I don't think that, quite frankly, there's enough diversity at the table to actually have us reimagine what could be. Not what is, but what could be. And that's some of the conversations we're getting into. Last example I'll give you is Walmart. Walmart's an incredible example right now, which is shocking because 20 years ago I would never say that. But how they're using AI in their frontline associates. They have not actually done any layoffs, unlike an Amazon who just laid off 16,000 workers this year. They are actually augmenting their workforce with AI to really reimagine that customer experience as you're walking into their stores. So that's another good example.
Hi.
I'll get your second question at lunch. Yeah.
Hi. Excellent. Wow. You in one of your slides, you said you have understanding the AI tooling ecosystem.
Yep.
Do you have a thread for me to be able to go to that place to start deciphering that and parsing through it?
Yes, so that is a great question. I'm working on it. The problem is the development of AI tools is becoming at a pace that it's almost impossible to keep up with. So here's what I'm going to actually tell you what I do, which it's going to be a little bit ironic. AI is really good at recommending other AI tools. So I don't know what you do. Depending on what you do, I'm going to just make this up. Let's pretend you're an executive in healthcare and you want to understand how AI can be incorporated in a safe way that protects patient privacy and HIPAA laws, in operations. When you're able to articulate all of that, AI is able to actually spit out, here's the 10 tools you should be thinking of, and it really can begin to problem solve. So that's what I'm doing right now because it's developing so fast that it's hard to really keep up. And then obviously, once I figure out some of those tools, test them, read about them, research them, but that takes the pool of 1,000 to about 10. That might be the most specific. It's a great question.
Okay, my second question was actually where you ended my first question. You said normalizing diversity is key, build a more inclusive workforce. I still see that being an issue in our workforce. How do you coach leadership on that and really help them shift and reach different pipelines to make sure it's more inclusive? Do you have any insight on how you're asking leadership about it? Are they receptive? How is that going?
So up until about 18, 16 months ago, this was not a fear-based question for leaders. Leaders are fearful right now of having anything that would place a target on their back of being too woke, and I put that in quotation marks, but that's just the reality I'm having with executives across all sides of this, political spectrum of this now has become a little bit of a scary topic for us to actually go talk about. When I was at Upwork, our chief diversity officer had to change her title, didn't have to, but made the choice to change her title to be chief culture officer because that felt safer. So that just, I want to be honest of the reality of what a lot of executive leaders, when you get to the very top, are grappling with right now. But the reality is, and a book I recommend you give to your leaders is by Thomas Malone. It's called Superminds. And he articulates in plain view why having diversity leads to better outcomes. It is a rational conversation that you have to go on with leaders right now, unfortunately, because as human beings, under stress, we saw our defaults. We actually are in preservation mode as a society. We're kind of here to hunker down and just preserve our own self because everything feels under attack. That is not the moment to then look around and think, how can I create more inclusion? How do I bring in people who are different than me? That's feeling fearful right now. And so we have to make sure, though, that we do not let fear override the best of our human qualities. When humans are operating at our best, we are inclusive, we are kind, we are gracious, we form community. And that is something we have to get back to, is how do we actually bring out the best of our human qualities? If you can get leaders operating out of that mode, you're gonna be able to, this is just a natural extension then. But we have to get out of this fear-based operating mode that we're in. And we need courage. We need boldness. Like, this is something that we still need to talk about, that we need to push our leaders on. It is not okay if your pipeline is still 80% white and male. Like, we have to just address it head on with data and values. And I think we all know, like, from human to human, I don't care what your belief systems are, I think we know kindred spirit to kindred spirit when we're operating on our best. When I see you for who you are. I don't care what you look like. I don't care about your political system. I see you, and I want you to contribute here in our organization. We have to get back to seeing people again. And there's a great chapter in that actually at the book, Contextual Competency, of how we actually get back to that. That should not be based on fear, but the reality is it is, and that's gonna be your biggest blocker right now.
First, thank you for everything. It was great insight. One of the questions I have is some of the colleagues I have are afraid to take risks in the professional place. And they are more understanding when they can relate it to their personal life first and or feel more safe to take the risk in their personal life before effectively trying it in the workplace.
Okay.
What is an example that you comfortably use AI in your personal life that would be good for me to use as a relative situation for them to relate to?
That's a good question. So, how do we think about AI personal usage then being a safer place to translate into workplace? I'm a researcher, so I have to start off with limitation. I do think there's going to be key differences, though, that we have to be mindful of. I'm just going to give you one example. When I was at Upwork, we were playing around with ChatGPT. Our biggest competitor was Fiverr. Someone at Fiverr had uploaded a press release of the next earnings call, and we were able to get some of that information. So I do think there's reasons to keep some of that separate. But I think one of the most exciting use cases that I don't see workers using enough are AI being able to actually sense your environment. So as a perfect example, I'll give you an example of that translated personal, then that went into business. So I was working with a hotel company, and there was so much friction in the kitchen. Like, people were running into each other, turnover was high, things were a mess. And so one of the chefs began using AI in his personal kitchen to understand, how do I best design this kitchen? How do I stack the recipes? Where should the food ingredients go? And then he had the epiphany of, oh my God, what if I just start doing this for the hotel? And we actually redesigned the commercial kitchen this way. And so instead of just chatting with GPT, actually giving it contextual imagery, and they recorded a video of how they worked over the course of the day. And AI was able to pick out of this is so inefficient, and this is why you're bumping into each other. This is why you're delayed on getting food out to the customers. And so they actually hired an architect and redesigned the kitchen based on all the imaging that they had and the recommendations. Engagement went up in the kitchen staff, turnover went down, and customers were much happier. The 3 to 4-star reviews went down and the 5-star reviews went up after they had this. So that's just an example of how you can play around with something to resolve a personal friction that makes a lot of sense in the commercial world. But I do want to caveat, it's important to keep some of that distinct too.
Time for one more question, which is for you.
Kelly, you shared a lot of great information that I think can be applied, across industries, across different types of businesses. I know some of us in this room, because we have some at this table too, as solo and small business owners in this drastically changing environment. Is there any specific advice you have for the impact that you see, the role that we could play in this change over time?
Yes. So as also a small business owner now, I love this question. I actually think if I was actually bullish on any AI opportunity, I actually think it's going to happen faster as solar entrepreneurship and small businesses because it's democratized what we can do. So as I think about the business that I've started, I would probably realistically, to do what I'm doing right now, probably would have had a team of about 5 people to actually scale. But now I've created an AI agent who operates as my paralegal to review contracts. Of course, I still get proper legal counsel when needed. Being able to do marketing campaigns. I've got an AI agent connected to Canva, and so it's able to really quickly design things. And so I actually think from a small business perspective, our ability to scale that smaller team wins is going to begin to the model. One of the things I've been saying, I actually think in the future of work, small is beautiful. And I think so often we've become so addicted to this like great consumerism and Amazon and convenience and all these things that happen at mass, but we've actually lost a lot of that human touch and connection in that process. And I actually think seeing what small businesses do with AI so that people like you and I can actually get out and talk with people more and have that human connection and have AI do a lot of the stuff that is just the, administrative work of business, I think is going to be powerful. And I think secondly, because we're not trying to necessarily do this at an enterprise level with 100,000 employees, the level of us to be able to experiment and try new things are going to happen much faster. These are the companies I'm watching at. They're the ones adopting new ways of working and building skyscrapers much faster than I think the big organizations can. So I'm actually super optimistic of what we're going to be able to continue to do with this technology. So I want to thank you all. I want to apologize. I know I threw a lot of insights at you, but as we had this time, like I said, want to be the canary in the coal mine to let you know change is going to continue to come. But I want to make sure we as women leaders continue to fight for that seat at the table, continue to have a voice, especially in the AI conversations. And my hope is, what I want to leave you with is, 70% of people don't aspire to be leaders today, and 70% of people don't just necessarily aspire to be leaders, also don't think they're leaving the workforce better. I want that number to change in our generation. I want to make sure as we begin to hand off leadership positions in the next 10 to 20 years, that stat is upside down, and that women are going to be the one to turn that upside down. Thank you so much.
All right. That was good. I always like to lead with some of the things that we heard today that was so impactful. I'm going to go down the line of what Dr. Monahan shared. When you end up in your personal Tenerife, how do we stop and not revert to our trained leadership defaults so that we save lives and not let the plot drift? Future-proof your career by thinking beyond your expertise. Tap into your human judgment, empathy, and wisdom because those are the true differentiators. Treat human judgment like a safety skill. Diversity is a gift. Do not let fear override the best of our human qualities. And what I got from this is your goal, your gold, your treasure is your authenticity. Now we will have a short mix and mingle break. Please return to your seats by, I would say, 10 o'clock, and then we will go on to the next section of our conference. And please remember, do your mix and mingles. See you in a bit. You got some snacks and got to meet with some awesome women in the room. For my mix and mingle, I met Amy McDermott from Palmer's Food Services. She is so amazing and gives the absolute best hugs ever. So she does, she gives the best hugs. So I am excited to introduce to you our next speaker, Jenna Sidhu. She will be leading us with a workshop titled Leading with AI, the Prompt Engineering Edge. What's so cool about Jenna, I was just having a conversation with her, and she is the woman who does it all, and she's good at it all. Jenna is an Assistant Director of Learning Design and Technology in RIT Center for Teaching and Learning. With over 10 years of experience as an educational technology leader in higher education, her consistent focus is on the intentional integration of technology to support curriculum. Jenna has held adjunct faculty positions at both RIT and Nazareth University, teaching courses in technical writing, freshman writing seminar, and educational technology. Her book chapter, From Within, Faculty as Agents of Change in Innovations in Conversations About Teaching Beyond the Workshops, explores creative approaches for fostering faculty development in higher education. She holds an MSED from NTID RIT and a bachelor's in English literature from the University at Buffalo. Thank you, Jenna, and please let us give her a warm tiger roar and clap. Let us welcome Jenna Sidhu to the stage.
I am so excited to be here. I was saying that I work primarily with faculty here at RIT, and I'm used to being a one-woman show. I'm not used to having sound and people running microphones and stuff. So this is a real treat. I feel very fancy today. And so here's our presentation. We're going to be talking about, actually it ties really well with the keynote speech about AI and kind of like how we can leverage it to help ourselves every day. We're going to focus on prompt engineering specifically. So just a little bit about me, like a lovely introduction. I'm not used to having that. I am very fortunate to work at the intersection of education and technology. It's a really exciting place to be. I also feel like I can never keep up with all the changes that are happening in my field, so I'm constantly racing behind them. But it is really fun to talk faculty and support faculty through these changes as they're considering how technology shapes education today and in the future. I also am very not technology focused outside in my personal life, and so that picture represents where I'd like to be right now, which is on a beach doing yoga as opposed to, in Rochester. It's a little cold. So just a little bit about me. So here's our agenda for today. This is going to be a hands-on workshop, and that's coming through really funny, but we're going to do a check-in activity. Then we'll define the types of AI so you have a good grounding in like what's out there. Review some of the more popular Gen AI tools, because there's lots out there, but I'll focus on like 5 of them. Explore some prompt engineering techniques to help you improve your prompt engineering, and then talk about some additional considerations that we should all think about, which again was touched on earlier. So at your tables, oh my gosh, my presentation's not, okay. At your tables you all have a scale, and I printed them out, but not enough for everyone, because this is a pair or group of 3 at most activity. What I'd like you to do is look at this AI scale. It's been adapted from one we use with faculty when they're thinking about teaching with AI and their comfort level. I want you to think about what is your comfort level right now on this stoplight scale of using AI professionally, and how are you using it? Okay, you're going to get into groups of 2 or 3, and you're going to share your name, where you're falling on the scale, and what you're using AI for right now professionally. I'm going to give you all about 5 to 7 minutes to do that. Again, groups of 2, 3, no more than 3 for me. Thank you so much. I'll time you. Can I pull everyone back together? Hopefully you heard my chime. I love hearing the conversation and having it be so engaged. Thank you so much. I hope you learned something from the people that you were speaking to. I'm curious, does anyone want to share what their pair or trio talked about, like where you fall on the scale and maybe how you're using it every day? We have time for like 1 or 2 people to share out if you feel like it. Is anyone willing? Sure. Oh, Let's see here. We need a microphone. I'm so sorry. They're going to run one up for you. It's coming. I can grab it too. Oh, thank you. Just so we can make sure you're heard.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So in our trio, we are, somebody's more of a one-ish, somebody's a two, and somebody's a three. So we're all in different kind of, areas in how we use it. And it's, learning it, feeling comfortable with it. We also talked about knowing when somebody uses it, because it changes up the language and how people talk and some of the words. I gave an example. Sometimes I have to do something in there, and instead of it taking me 5 hours to do it on my own, going back and forth and massaging something and getting it right may take me an hour and a half. But it's not like 100%. You can't just put whatever you want in, and you have to think about your input to get your output.
Absolutely. And that's what we're going to focus on today. That's great. Thank you. Does anyone else want to share what they talked about at their table? Where you landed on the scale and how you're using it? Ooh, we have someone right in the middle. Thank you.
Actually, it was a little conversation that started out with how we're not using it.
Okay.
And then how we then try to find ways to still have it be useful for us. So like, I'm a travel planner on the side. It's my part-time job. And I hear a lot of my clients saying, oh, I use ChatGPT to figure out what the best, hotel is at Disney or whatever, or the best route to do the parks, because that's kind of my specialty. It's terrible for that. It doesn't know what rides are closed. It doesn't know which ones had a refresh. It doesn't know what's popular. So it is limited in that. But in other things where like you're looking for more broad context, it's really good for those types of things. Like, I'm planning a trip to Antarctica. When's the best time to cross the Drake Passage, which is supposed to be like the most dangerous body of water? Obviously, I want to do that safely. And so finding out things like that, like when's the best time to go XYZ for nature reasons, or if you're specific with it, it works better to kind of help you do those types of things. It also is really good for building resources, creating social media campaigns and things like that, and being able to compile resources that I've already put together that I know are right, but then packaging it in a way that is, I can easily distribute it to my clients, and it looks prettier than just my Word document nonsense that I have. And so I've used it a lot for that, because I'm not good with Canva. I'm working on it. But being able to just spit like what I want and then tweak it and ask it for specific color schemes and all that, it's nice. It's good for that kind of stuff. So.
Awesome. Thank you. Yeah. So I heard really interesting things. That something from earlier that Kelly was mentioning is that you have to have that, what we say in higher ed, content expertise, right, in order to evaluate the output that's coming out and then leverage it or use it and improve upon it, right? That's something you said. You also talked about tone of AI, right? So in higher education, the big problem right now is that students are submitting papers that are written by an LLM. And so some faculty were encouraging them to do a writing sample in class, right? So that we can see what does that student actually sound like on demand, and then compare it to writing that's submitted later on, because how else do we get a kind of set of their language? But if you've worked with someone for a long time, you can hear when the language switches suddenly. These are all really good insights. Thank you so much. And it's very normal that we're all going to fall somewhere on this scale, and there's going to be a big range of people in the room, and that's okay. I'm trying to aim for the middle today in this workshop, and so hopefully you will all find something of value. So really quick, I just want to go over the types of AI, because whenever I'm in a room with men and technology and they're talking about AI, they're always like, there's so many types, and everyone says AI, and they don't talk about the type, So let's just talk about the 4 accepted types of AI and understand what we're actually talking about today. So machine learning is one type of AI, and it uses sample data. It can learn and train from the data that's being put into the data set. Machine learning is where we're focused today, okay? Neural networks are computer systems that are designed to kind of mimic our brains. Our brains are so complex that right now, actually, no one's able to really mimic our brain because they can't understand how our brain is functioning still at this point in time, so that's good to know. But a neural network might be something like the AI we see in the medical field that's looking and reading x-rays and helping to identify information. That's where that type of AI is being deployed. Natural language processing, that's probably the one you're all using the most without knowing it maybe. Siri is natural language processing. Alexa is natural language processing. Your spam filter in your email is NLP. Okay, so that's the stuff we've seen more. And then robotics. So at RIT, we're very lucky that we have lots of little robots kind of running around our campus. I always love the lawnmower robots. They kind of cheer them on when they're going, up the hill, and then they park themselves at their solar place to charge, and I love that. Self-driving cars is another example of robotics, where they're combining like robotics with artificial intelligence. What's interesting, and when we work with faculty too, many are surprised, AI started in 1956. This is not a new technology. What the disruptor is the machine learning, right? That's what's actually disrupting us now. It's like an advancement from what AI used to be. So it's been around for a while. So what many of us are using is generative AI, that is machine learning. It is different from natural language processing because it can create things, right? It can create writing, images, video. It is producing, and it learns from the data. So it can improve over time because we can actually teach it to do more. So that's what is disruptive in the technology world, and that is what is setting off this chain of events that Kelly was talking about for us to consider. So I've heard this analogy recently, and I really, really like it. When we think about generative AI, we are riding an e-bike, okay? We're steering the e-bike. We have to tell the e-bike where to go, but the e-bike is helping us to get there, maybe a little bit faster. Maybe we can go to new terrain that we were not able to get on by ourselves. So think of generative AI more like us steering and riding an e-bike versus our friend the Roomba, who kind of is a set it and forget it type of AI, narrow AI. It gives a task, it does its task, and then we're not supposed to really intervene, although we all know the Roombas get stuck in the corners and sometimes we have to rescue them, right? But occasionally, without that occasional input, they're supposed to kind of be autonomous. So generative AI, we're riding the e-bike and we're steering it where it wants to go. And here are some of the popular Gen AI tools. Now, as Kelly was saying, there are too many tools. I cannot tell you all of them. I think going into AI and asking it, what is a tool that would help me accomplish X is probably a great strategy right now. But here are the ones you may hear about the most and the ones we use at RIT the most. So first are large language models, Microsoft 365 Copilot or Google Gemini. ChatGPT was the first, so everyone refers, we say to ChatGPT like Kleenex, right? Like Kleenex is a tissue. Okay, ChatGPT is just a brand of a large language model. Here at RIT, we actually are very lucky to have Copilot and Gemini access. I have to say this to be a good partner with my IT friends. The ones in RIT have enterprise data protection applied to them. That means we are operating in a safe space. And if you work at a company that has AI paid for, you should use the one that your company is providing you because it likely has enterprise data protection applied. That means when you put stuff in, it stays there. It doesn't go back to train the model. When you're using ChatGPT, it is free, but you're paying with your data, right? Your data goes back out to OpenAI. So just be aware of that. And so especially when we work with students and we think about faculty's intellectual property of their information, we really encourage them to use the enterprise data protected versions of the large language models. But they also offer these paid and pro licensing with enhanced features within them, so you'll get some extra stuff if you pay more. But those are the ones we're most using. That's the base product, if you will. We have Google Notebook LM as part of our Gemini workplace. And Notebook LM is fabulous for education right now because we can control the data that's inside of it. So that's a big difference. Here we're using big data sets. In Notebook LM, it operates on the data I put inside of it. So if I'm taking a class and I'm really struggling with a topic, I could upload the 7 journal articles I'm supposed to read and maybe the chapter from the book, and I can ask it to give me insights. It can generate mind maps. It can generate quizzes, study cards, audio podcasts, videos. What else can it do? Reports and infographics, if I didn't already say that. So there's a lot of stuff that happens in Notebook LM. Again, if you're at RIT, you have access to this. It's pretty great. Our faculty are using it with students as a study tool, but faculty are also using it to help summarize their own research, right? Because it helps them look at the data more in depth and more quickly. Now, there's lots of imaging generative AI tools out there. Leonardo.ai is like a standalone one. It promises to be better than the other ones. I haven't tried it, so go out and try it and see what you think. But within Gemini, for example, there's something called Nano Banana. So if you're a Google user, you'll see Nano Banana. It's embedded in it, and it creates images. Frankly, every image you're seeing in this presentation was generated with Nano Banana, okay? Just so I wanted to kind of do this very meta so you could see what it looks like. And I had to have a lot of back and forth to get what you're seeing there, but certainly it can do it, and so can Copilot, okay? Napkin AI is another one that I just recently heard at a conference that can generate infographics from text. So it's another one to check out. Again, it's free, so you're putting your data in, you're paying with your information. And then lastly, we have these video generative technologies. Sora 2 is the bigger one. It was in the news recently because Disney gave Sora 200 of its characters to use for video creation. So if you wanted to make a 1-minute video and you want a Disney character to appear in it, use Sora 2 because they will be there. I don't know which characters are in there, but this was a fairly big deal and in the news recently. Videos, I feel like have more tells still. Like if you're watching an AI video, I watched one recently of like a gymnast trying to do some tricks and he went through the bar and then like over the bar. I don't know, it was so funny. Split in half to get back up and I was like, okay. But I am sure that as we progress, the videos will get better. Back a year ago when I started talking about AI real intensely with the imagery, a lot of the times the fingers, I don't know if you've noticed of AI, 17 fingers or something, but it is getting better. So I'm sure the video technology will as well. So these are just some, again, not all encompassing, but the ones that you may be using every day or have impacting your work. The one thread you'll notice, it's true for every single tool I just mentioned, is that they all rely on a text input or a voice-to-text input, right? They require us to put something in to then get something out of it. So the input really determines the output, right? And so the fancy way to talk about that is prompt engineering. It's just a fancy word for it. And I'll let you read what Stanford says is the definition of prompt engineering. Sounds great. This is what I say. It's just how you get Gen AI to do what you want. Right? And when we optimize prompt engineering, we're trying to get to the output we desire faster so we don't have to have so much back and forth. That's kind of the goal, right? So I went to Harvard. They have a free course out there. You can take it on how to maximize prompt engineering. And I went to see what were they saying about this. And so this is from their class 4 of prompt engineering. They say, Harvard says, Gen AI is really good at explaining, at writing and rewriting. That's the way I use it the most. I often ask it, I'm kind of verbose in my writing, so I ask it to make things more concise, or if I ask it to maybe change the tone a little bit. For a creative brainstorming partner, that's really helpful. It can also analyze and summarize data really well. I had a big survey come in, and I asked my 2 LLMs to analyze the data for me and provide me with insights just to see. I then looked at the data myself because I wanted to make sure I could compare and contrast, but it's really helpful with that, and then organizing and classifying. On my team, we talk a lot about how the LLMs have different flavors. So we find that Gemini, for example, is better at maybe the top 3 bullets. It has a little bit more of a conversational tone. When I ask it to write, it's a little bit happier and flowerier. Copilot is just the facts. It's really straightforward, better for me for analyzing and summarizing. So if you have access to both tools and you're playing with them, just know they all have their nuances. So what Harvard says is that if you want to write an effective prompt, here's the structure you can use. Task, instructions, and context, okay? TIC, a nice little acronym for you. The task is what you want the AI to do. The instructions are how you want it to do it. And then the context is all that info that you're providing it to help it get to, there we go. All the info you're providing it to help you get to the output you're looking for. So that TIC model is helpful. It's really simple and straightforward, but it makes sense, and it will help the AI to meet your expectations. So here's an example. My task is to create a title for a presentation. The instructions are generate 3 examples of a title for an upcoming presentation on prompt engineering. Use the content in the attached presentation. The presentation's for a women's leadership conference. Reference the conference website. I put the URL in. Match the style and tone. I really was struggling with how do I title my presentation, and so this is a real task I did inside of Gemini, and it came back with 3 examples that I felt overpromised and I was going to underdeliver. Okay, so I was like, oh, I don't like that. So then I took one of the titles and I said, I like this, but can you focus more on the prompt engineering and less on the leadership side? And then it came back with 3 more examples. And then I was still like, I don't know, this seems a little too lofty because I think it goes high level a lot. And so then I asked it to narrow it down and bring it down a notch, and I got to the title that you saw for the title of this presentation. Okay, so that's a real example of me using the TIC model and trying to like go back and forth with the prompt to get what I need. Now, how many people have heard of this? 0 shot, 1 shot, multi-shot, or few shot? Okay, great. Well, now you're going to at least learn something about this today. So this is an extension of prompting. When we think about 0 shot prompting, this is how most of us interact with Gen AI at this time. You just give it instructions. You're not really giving examples or anything. You maybe give some context. That's kind of what I just modeled there, right? But that's all I'm doing. I'm just talking to the AI. So my example, identify summer camps for 10-year-olds in Rochester, New York. This is a real concern I have since I have a 10-year-old who needs to go to summer camp in Rochester soon. Okay. But then one-shot prompting is we give the AI an example. We tell it, like up front, here's an example of what I want, and then you give it the instructions. Now this example I found online, it made me laugh so hard because I don't actually know, when you have to translate, I think I accidentally rizzed a girl. I don't know what that means. I had to look it up. Yeah, it's true. I guess it means you like flirt with someone. Okay, now we know that. Yeah. I guess I'm cringe too because I don't know. But anyway, so you give it one example of the desired output essentially. Few shot, I bet you can all guess, means now you give multiple examples for the AI to use of what it is you're looking for. You're essentially building a data set to give the AI to train it in what you're looking for. That's what you're doing. So the example here is that you generate 5 romantasy novel titles in this style. You give it kind of 3 that have style, and then see what it comes back with, okay? You're training the AI when you give it examples. This is best practice in teaching also, right? I am constantly advocating for faculty here to give the example of what they want the assignment to look like to students so that they know what the output should be. If you give them an example and even multiple examples, odds are the students are going to do a better job of achieving the outcome, right? The learning outcome. So it's the same with AI, right? Like if you give it examples of what you're looking for, it'll get closer to what that outcome should be. Again, all this stuff, when you really break it down, is kind of common sense. It just has a lot of fancy words around it. Okay. So here's some other tips, and these come directly from OpenAI. One is that they suggest separating the prompt instructions from the context. And so you can put quotes or hashtags around the actual contextual information, and it helps the AI to understand that better. Of course, be very specific, descriptive. Be detailed, because the more detail you put in, the better the response back is going to be. They do recommend doing the starting with 0 shot and then working up to few shots. So kind of start with little and then kind of add more information to build on your previous attempts. And then, be specific too about the output. Like I want bulleted list. I want to be an Excel spreadsheet. I want you to generate me a Word document. So make sure you kind of give it examples of what you're looking for. Whoops-a-daisy. And then keep the directions positive. This makes me laugh because I think of even with my children, positive reinforcement is stronger than negative reinforcement, right? If I'm I love how you put your dishes in the dishwasher, as opposed to, why didn't you put your dishes in the dishwasher? Same idea with the LLM, right? If you just say, I want you to do this, it'll do a better job. Then it doesn't quite, it's not as good at the reverse of that. So these are some instructions. Now, earlier, when Kelly was talking, I was like, the one that's not up here, but that I love, is also asking the AI to provide you with a prompt. So if you want to do something, but you're not sure what the best prompt is, ask it to give you the prompt that'll help you to get to the goal. And it will generate a prompt for you to then copy, paste, customize, and put back in to try to get the output you're looking for. So you can also use it that way. I've also noticed as things are improving, Gemini will give me little prompts. It'll be like, okay, I did that. Do you want me to bop, bop, bop? And it'll ask me a few more things. So it's trying to interact with me in that way. Okay, so these are all tips, and I went through them really fast, okay? What we're going to do now is we're going to go into the Lego room, okay? We're going to practice, and we're going to play together. So I asked everyone to bring a device, and it's okay if you didn't. I'm going to have you do this in pairs or trios again. So if one person that you can find has a device with you, that's awesome. What I'm going to ask you to do is open up a device that is connected to Wi-Fi. It could even be your phone. If you're don't want to pull out your laptop, that's fine. Hold on 1 second before you start chatting, because there's more instructions. Okay, so I'm going to ask you to go to one large language model that you have access to. If you work at RIT or your company has, Gemini or Copilot, go to those. If you don't know, try ChatGPT. If you go to that URL, it'll just put you in a free prompt area. You can just play with it, okay? I'm going to give you guys examples. These are on your table as well in case you can't read in the back. I was worried about being able to see these. I have 2 examples that you can choose from. They're sample prompts. One is, ironically, crafting an itinerary to Hawaii. I am sorry, I wanted to do something fun. The other one is more of a businessy kind of prompt. I want you to try following the 0 shot, and then the 1 shot, and then the few shot, and see what happens, okay? Pay attention to that. If you want to also go off and try some of those other tips, or you want to try asking the LLM for a prompt to structure it and try that, go for it. If you just like my samples, you can make your own up. That is totally cool. Also, I just want you to try giving examples and seeing what happens, okay? I'm going to give you about 5 to 7 minutes to do that. Here we go. Okay, I'm going to pull everyone back together in the interest of time. So sorry to interrupt you. I love hearing the conversation. Just to make sure we stay on time with our agenda today, I hope that you did do the task and that you were able to find something interesting in that. Anyone who, like the runners with the microphones, I'll take, okay, perfect. I'm gonna just take 2 share outs in the interest of time quickly to think about what did you notice, what worked, what didn't. You can just reflect on any of those 3 questions. Does anyone want to talk about what they just experienced while they were trying the 0 shot, 1 shot, few shot prompting? And if you don't, that's okay too. Over here. Oh, thank you.
So this is less about what I've played with now, but I've played with it before, and especially with the multi-prompts. And it is something that when you're working on it, if you've got examples of what it should look at or multiple documents, you can only really put in a max of 2 per time. If you try putting in 3 or more examples of things, even if they're really good examples, it gets so confused. It has no idea what you're talking about. I've given it pictures of gears for a marketing campaign, and it sent me a picture of popcorn. So it literally has no idea what's going on. You have to start a new chat and go back to the basics because it gets so confused.
Yes, that's a really good point too, that if you find that in a chat it is lost, like close that chat and start again because it just keeps going back to the beginning. So do you mean when you say like a limit of 2, you mean 2 attachments? Not 2 examples that you're typing in. Yes, so that it works best with a number, like a streamlined amount of attachments. Okay, thank you. Does anyone else have anything they want to share about that experience? What'd you notice? What worked well? What didn't work well? Ooh, okay, thank you.
So I wanted to try it by not putting in all of the aspects of the first prompt, even though it was considered 0. And I just liked the suggestions that it gave me at the end. Like, if you want to include this, I can also include this. Like, if I didn't put the numbers of travelers or a particular budget, it offered that as suggestions for me in case I forgot to ask it those things.
Yes, it is getting very helpful and helping to prompt us to prompt it, right? Like it's starting to do that. And it is just a conversation back and forth. Okay, awesome. I'm so sorry. I don't mean to cut the share short, but just because I want to stay on time. But I hope that that was helpful to you as you were thinking about how do I interact with AI and get it to give me the results that I'm looking for. Of course, we have to keep in mind our competencies, right? Like how important it is that you are competent and you understand so you can evaluate the output yourself for accuracy. And that's something we talk about a lot here at RIT. So I can't leave without just touching on these points because it would be, as a leader, we have to keep all of these things in mind as we talk about AI use and how fun it is to prompt it. But there's real ethics of AI use concern, right? Talking about those data sets being biased. I found it funny that as I was trying to make images, every time I said, make a robot for a woman's leadership, it gave me a very curvaceous robot, and I asked it to try to pull it back down. I think it shows the data sets are biased, like who they were created by, right? So that's a big thing. There's also the ethics, our CAD faculty, so that's creative arts and design, talk a lot about like artists and the implication of people taking their work and using it, so there's a lot of ethical concerns there. Of course, everyone knows about the environmental impacts at this point. I think people have seen it widely, like every time you prompt AI, it's a bottle of water being poured out, right? Like that's what they say. Of course, every time you get on a plane, you are also having an environmental impact, and every time you watch Netflix, you also have an environmental impact. So it's good that AI is raising this conversation up to think about sustainability and what's worth the impact on our environment and what's not. And then, of course, data privacy. So again, anyone who works at RIT, I encourage you to use the ones that are provided by IT because it locks us into that safe space. But consider, what are you putting in? And how private is that data, and do you want it out there? I was in a meeting a couple of weeks ago where some woman said, I just think all my data's out there now at this point, I just give up. And I was like, oh man, I hope that's not true, but that is some people's kind of mindset on that one. But then, Kelly, like you were saying, I can't say it quite as eloquently, but I really wanted to end with the idea of the human element. Like, what do we add as humans in value to the use of this? Again, bring you back to the idea of driving the e-bike, right? Like, we are steering the AI in many ways, particularly generative AI. It's what we put in that drives it forward. So steer it responsibly. Think about, how do we add value? We're asking our students now to think about, when you use AI, how do you add value? And how do you describe that to your employer? Because they have to be able to articulate that when they get out. So maybe as leaders, that's something you're talking about with your teams too, okay? So if you have any questions, I think I need to end, so I don't know that I can take questions, but I'd love to continue the conversation. This is my daily work with faculty here at RIT, and if you have any questions or want to continue chatting, that's my email address, and I'll be here for the rest of the day. Thank you so much, appreciate it.
Awesome. All right. Well, thank you so much, Jenna, for leading us through an incredibly timely workshop on AI and prompt engineering. I want to show you something, because as we were sitting there, did we get to pump it up? All right, let's drop it in. Look at your girl, she is so beautiful. This is my brand twin. And so I took a course it's called socialdocs.com. And this woman is changing the game when it comes to creating real life photo shoots of yourself. And so thank you so much for that. So if you notice, geez. What is so cool about it is that this course walks you through the prompts of what you want your photo shoot to look like. And so you could actually go in your closet and take pictures of outfits that you already own, and elements in just all of talking to it about your feel and all that, like your look, your feel, your aura. And of course, it's still learning. But if you look back if you go on, look at me at social media, what it does is it actually evaluates who you are over time, so that it creates an image of you that is you. So it's really cool. And so what it does is, if you have to go somewhere really quickly and you have an outfit and you want to match up and you're like, all right, let me go in my closet, boop, 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 put in the prompts, can you give me a photo shoot for that moment? And then here you are. So it's really, it's neat. AI is here, and we have to, at some point, jump into it. So am I afraid of my information being out there? I had to get over that fear. I did. I literally had to get over that fear. And so I'm actually giggling because my work, I sit on the board of the Citizens FBI Academy, and our information is out there. But still be careful, though. Still be careful. But if you are interested in learning on how to create your brand twin, and you want to have a kick-butt photo shoot, go ahead to that website. All right, so now we have our short mix and mingle break. We have about 10 minutes, and then we'll come back to our panel. Welcome back. I hope you're feeling refreshed and energized and all of that jazz. We have a powerhouse panel today. I am so honored to be sitting next to the best of the best. This panel is about women leaders in traditionally male-dominated industries. I know they have a lot to offer today. Do you want to hear it? Do you want to hear all the good stuff? Let's clap it up. Let's clap it up. Let's give us some energy. All right, so let me introduce our panelist here with us today. We have Robin Brookhart. Robin is the president and CEO of Liberty Pumps. Thank you for being here with us. Awesome. We also have Jackie Nicholson, who is the athletic director for the Rochester Institute of Technology. We have Dr. Mary Dembovi, who served as the vice president for neuroscience at the Neuroscience Institute at Rochester Regional. And we have Lauren Tamburo, who is the vice president of production at OG's Brands. So we're just going to go straight into it. I think that's the theme for today. We've just gotten straight into all of the things. And so what the theme that has been threaded throughout everything that we've heard today is authenticity. Not forgetting who you are. And remember, women, we cannot be replaced. We get stronger when the tough gets going. And you will hear stories of just how these women have built themselves in their careers and also passed the baton on. So our first question. This is like let's get into it. Tell me all of your business. We want to know. So please, and you could start anywhere, please share a bit about your educational background, what you thought you wanted to do. I wanted to be an astronaut, but I'm not good at math, so I figured on my calculations back I would miss the Earth and end up at the sun. So what you thought you wanted to do when you grew up and how you ultimately found your way into your current field. What drew you to it? And anyone can start.
Okay, is this on? Yes, okay. Well, I just want to say thank you for inviting me to be on this panel. It truly feels like an honor to be here, so thank you. Education. So my undergrad was in marketing, and then I went on later to get my MBA with a concentration in manufacturing from RIT. So great program, loved it. When I was younger, in college, in high school even, Liberty was just never on my radar. It was a lot different than what it is today. So picture like this industrial, kind of a gritty space that smelled like oil and metal. I would do, when I was young, there would be some jobs I could do. And they were mostly just mundane tasks. And so it was really hard for me to envision a career at Liberty when I was young. So my aspirations were really like maybe to be a sales rep, to work in advertising, live in a city. And after college, that's what I ended up doing. I ended up moving to Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, and I worked as an account exec. So that's kind of where I started out, like in the early days.
Thank you so much for sharing.
Thanks.
Anyone else would like to go? Oh, she said she's going to talk a little bit. I'm here for it.
You hear me?
We can hear
I
you
can go
now.
next. First of all, that's my AI-generated picture in the brochure. I thought I'd just say that because I think it's got to be about 20 years old. I'm like, oh, that's pretty good, right? So anyways, I had a one-track brain as a kid. From the time I was about 7 years old, I knew I wanted to be a doctor, and by the time I was 13, I knew I wanted to do something with people who had brain injury or stroke. I came here in 1989. I actually finished medical school in 1981. There was no AI then. And yes, but I use it every day. But I almost use it by default because when you ask certain questions now on your phone, the answers are all AI generated. And the same thing with a lot of our medical resources that we use. So I thought I was going to be a researcher. And I get here for a while, and I was thrown into a situation where I had to create and run a program. I never did that before. So By default, I ended up being a physician administrator, and I discovered that I was good at it. I like to put together programs. I'm good at analyzing large amounts of data, and I don't like doing the same thing all the time, so doing new things I liked. The other thing, I just want to say something to leave with you. Don't ever seek a position because, yes, I want that job. Decide what it is that you're good at, what you love doing, and what you want to do with your career. What can you do to make a difference in your community in whatever way that is? And then you look at where you are, what your skills are, and you decide, hey, this position is where I think I want to head. But you always have to keep an open mind because curveballs constantly get thrown at you. And when I came here and started with a little 14-bed inpatient brain injury recovery unit, I never realized that at the end of my formal career, I work part-time with residents and students now, and I love it, that I would end up being in charge of neurology, neurosurgery, physical medicine and rehab, pain and spine, all the therapists, all the nurses, everybody. And just to sit and think, yes, I had to figure out a way to get neurosurgeons to do what I wanted them to. And we can talk more about that later if somebody has a question, because this is maybe some insights on how you work with certain men.
That's good. I like that. How do you work with certain men? Tell us about those certain men. We want to know, okay? All right.
Works with husbands, too.
I like it. We're about to get all the gems today. Jackie.
Well, mine's very simple. I was a college student athlete, so I ran track and field at Virginia Tech. I was a recovering hurdler with bad knees still to this day. But during my sophomore year of high school, my mom got a job with Lockheed Martin. And from that time, she beat it into me that I should be an engineer. I should be an engineer. I can get a job. I can get the job. She was going to get me the job once I graduated. So that was her plan. And I went to Virginia Tech, very similar to you, like with math calculations. Do not let me build or do anything or design. You would have been in bad shape. Engineering fundamentals took me out pretty quickly my first year of college. And I decided this is not what I wanted to do. And so I sat down with my advisor in college and we were just talking. And so I decided to go into human services. At that time, I wanted to be a social worker. And I said, I can do this. I want to help people navigate systems that didn't often see them and they couldn't excel and do things. And I did an internship the summer of my junior year with my best friend from high school. His mom was a social worker for Camden County, New Jersey. If anyone's in New Jersey, you know Camden County, it is not very quality or a good place. And so I remember going on some calls at like 3 a.m. and I'm like, oh, heck no, to take kids out of their homes. And I was like, oh, I can't do this either. So now I am here, my senior year of college, trying to figure out what I'm going to do. And my advisor at that time said, hey, won't you work in college athletics? I was like, what? Like, to continue doing this? And at that time, she was like, well, you can go into academics, you can go into compliance, you can go into business. There's so many sides of college athletics. And I was like, okay, I'll give it a try. And I went into being an advisor for the football team at Virginia Tech. And that's how kind of I ended up where I am. So athletics was kind of the thing that put all of the things I wanted to do together and help student athletes navigate systems that are out there, barriers or challenges for them. So I kind of fell into this in a way. I knew I wasn't going to be an engineer, but I definitely didn't know I was going to be a college athletic director either.
Go ahead. Ms. Lauren.
So I'm going to take a couple more minutes because I think, let's start. I'm Lauren Tamburo. I am the Vice President of Production for OG's brand, which is a cannabis gummy company. So how did you go from a biochemistry degree in 2004 to cannabis gummies? So I'm going to take a couple minutes on that. Yeah, I know. It seemed very linear at the time, if that helps. So like many people, I graduated with my biochem degree. I loved it. I loved learning it. I loved RIT, but I didn't know what I wanted to do. So I was not ready to get a master's degree. So I was like, I'm going to put my foot out in that world and see what happens. Had a job weighing out ingredients for other people for a while. I was like, oh, that's boring. I want to run the experiments, right? And so I got a job in the analytical chemistry department of a company called Cadbury. Right, food, yum. After about a year working there, I was able to have up to a certain amount of money per year in tuition reimbursed if it was within the field. So they paid for my master's degree. So I have a master's in business and food science from Rutgers because it was half an hour away from where I worked. And all I had to do was give them 2 years of service. As someone in their 20s, that was not something I could have done without them. I'm very appreciative. Although I will say I did stay 11 years, so I think they got their money out of me. I started as a senior lab technician, and I left in analytical chemistry. I left as a senior scientist in their food science department. And it was 11 years, a lot of friends. I like to say I grew up there, right? That was my entire 20s into my very early 30s. I grew up at Cadbury, Kraft, Mondelez. The name changed on the outside, the lab stayed the same. But I got to a point where I felt very siloed, right? I only see R&D. I don't see anything else. So I got a cold call from a recruiter to go from a 10,000 person company on the S&P 500 to a 10-person company for a plant-based protein company in New York City. I said, okay, let's try it. And there I got to learn what it was like to work for my first CEO, who has zero science background, work with marketing, work with sales, and really understand the breadth of what makes a company run. I went on maternity leave for my second child, and they laid me off 2 weeks before I went back into the office. This was 6 years ago. It still happens, and sadly, it was legal, because there are different rules for greater than 50-person companies and less than. But it was a dick move. It was. You know who has no money? Someone who's been on maternity leave for 4 months and thinks they're going back to a full-time job. Now, like all of you, I panicked for, I don't know how long you would panic for. It was about a week. And I said, wait a minute. Instead of just sending my resume everywhere, because I worked at this small company, I knew a lot of other small companies. So I actually made a short list of what brands I would actually really like to work for. Like, what brand resonates with me? One was Red's Burritos. They're delicious. And the other one is called Vertosa. They are a cannabis ingredient company out of California. So I emailed the CEO and their salesperson who I had met. I'm like, hey, do you remember me? He's like, yes, I remember you. I'm like, well, I just got laid off, and here's my resume. Vanna Weisstyle, does any of this look interesting to you? I would like to find something here. So it will probably be the most baller move of my career to email a CEO and ask him to create a job for me, and he did. And what was even more amazing is I became their first remote employee 3 days before the airport shut down with COVID. So I went from I'm a mom with no job to I am one of the few people with a job during COVID. So when they say one door closes and another opens, it can happen. I would have never have been able to see that coming. So I worked for them, and sadly, a couple years later, they also laid me off. But this one was better. They're like, we love you, we just don't have money. And that is one of the challenges with the small companies and the instability. Sometimes you run out, and then people have to go their own way. So I consulted for about 1.5 years. I had built my own book of business. I could have kept consulting in food and in cannabis, but ultimately I like being a part of a team. One of my companies that I was working for needed more of my time, so it went from, do this project to I need half your time to, well, your contract's up and we're not done. What do you want to do? So I said, I want to work for you. And so I became a part of OG's Brands. Since then, we've gone from one manufacturing site in Arizona. I've brought us to Illinois and into New Jersey last year. Those have now been operational for 1 year. And currently, I'm bringing us into New York, Pennsylvania, and Massachusetts, maybe Nevada. We'll see how that goes.
That is amazing.
I just wanted to take a minute because, as I said, it was a very nonlinear path.
Let's clap for that. Let's clap for that. So there's a theme that I'm noticing about transition, and also about, again, I'm going back to the authenticity piece, and I don't want to not talk about this one thing. I'm feeling this in my core. It's not in the prompts. But did you know, ladies, it's okay to start over? You are not just this one thing. You have been everything to everyone. That is a talent in and of itself. So if there's anything that you get from this today, know that with the tools that you have been equipped with in this room today, you can start over. I still don't know who I want to be when I grow up. And we'll find out who I am on the day that we're all promised is a birth, and we're all promised a death. And that's the day we'll find out. But until then, hit the restart button any time you want. So as we go into certain men, talk about them, okay? Talk about them. So being in a traditionally male-dominated industry created both, of course, advantages and disadvantages, and we'll like to hear from you all. Can you share a specific example of when your unique perspective was a clear advantage, and or perhaps a time when it felt like a disadvantage? And I would love for all of us to answer this.
Okay. Let's see. So I don't know if I would call this a perspective per se, but I will say when I started at Liberty, I did start in the marketing area. And yes, I had been living in Pennsylvania in Harrisburg. And one day my mom called me, and I had been there for 5 years, and she said, hey, she goes, Liberty was growing. And she goes, position just opened up in marketing. Would you be interested in interviewing for it? And it's a family business. I'm third generation. So I said, yes, I was ready. I was ready to do that. And so anyway, I started working at Liberty in 1997. I've been there for almost 30 years. And so I started in marketing, but was really drawn to the technical side of things. So I transitioned over to customer service, technical. Sizing pumps for, various applications and troubleshooting and all that jazz. And I remember there were a few times, so this wasn't perspective, but I would, a plumber would call and he would hear my voice, and without even getting into anything, he would just insist on talking to a man. So that, I would say, I'll chalk that up as a disadvantage. And then as far as an advantage, I will say this. So within our industry, and I imagine most industries, there are women's groups. And when I think about our competitors, they're all, all the CEOs of all of our competition, they're all men. So in being part of these women's groups, I have access to customers, because we have a lot of customers who attend these events that they don't have access to, and it makes me smile. So I'll definitely chalk that one up as an advantage.
Thank you so much for that. Dr. Mary.
So when I was in medical school in my residency training, which I did at the Mayo Clinic, that institution was an extremely conservative, male-dominated institution. And the fact that out of 40 students, my medical school class had 12 women, that was just a shock to everybody. But in that day, if you were discriminated against or harassed, you had no recourse. There was no affirmative action. There wasn't anything. And so you had to figure out ways to survive. You had to figure out how to ignore, to move ahead, and to keep focused on what your goal is. I think now the discrimination in behavior, except for one instance, probably the worst instance I experienced in my whole career, which was 10 years ago, is very subtle, and you know it's happening, but it's hard to put your finger on it. So my advice to you would be never be unprepared. If you have a proposal, let's say you want to develop a pain and spine management program. You need to have partners to do that. I'm a physician, I'm not the numbers person, but I have a good idea from a clinical perspective how to put that together. How can I work with other people? How can I bring in physical therapy, occupational therapy, a spine surgeon, and get their ideas and get the business part? So make sure, before you present that to your boss, whoever it may be, man or woman, make sure that you have your act together, because if you're unprepared, it's not going to fly. And I learned from a lot of my mistakes. Also, you have to know when not to keep pushing. There may be something you really want, but you can't do it at that time, or you're told no, or you become aware there's not enough resources. So then you have to take a step back. But then you say, oh, well, you know what? There isn't a real good program for people with pituitary tumors in Rochester. And we have endocrinologists, and we have a surgeon who does the surgery, and you know what? I think this is something we could do. So you find something else that you can keep working on. One of the reasons I think our program grows so well is that we worked as a team. And as a physician, I viewed myself more as a part of that team. And everyone had a role. And everyone understood that our main role was to do the best we could for our community, our patients, and our families. And that kind of put me over the years in a very different perspective than a lot of physicians who did their medical training. Maybe they were a surgeon, and suddenly they ended up being the chair of something or other. Also, the field is becoming, I think actually now people going into medical school, more women than men. But the people in leadership positions are still largely men. There are some women. And the other thing with consolidation and mergers in healthcare, it's become more corporate. The structure is more corporate, and often the people who are making those ultimate decisions are not physicians, they're not clinicians of any type. So it presents a different challenge. And so make a game of it. Make it fun. I have this problem. I really know what I want to get done. I have a good plan for it. What can I do to get it done? Good example with the neurosurgeons. We had 6 neurosurgeons, and they were all using something different for their implants, different companies. Costs a lot of money. Where if you could narrow that down to 1 or 2 companies, you can get a deal from those companies on the implants. I could shave $5 million off a budget in a year by doing that. Well, they all want to do their thing, and they're used to doing their thing. So how do you get it done? Spent a lot of time with the chief of neurosurgery, and guess what? It sort of ended up being his idea. But I didn't care, because the bottom line was I could save that money off my budget, save the hospital, and I could use it elsewhere for something. So sometimes it doesn't matter if you make it someone else's idea, because you're focused on, what do I need to do? What's my objective?
Thank you so much. So I'm hearing learning when to fight the battles and learn when to create your own. Ready? Because we're talking about sports.
I know.
There's a lot of men in the sports.
Oh, tell me about it.
Talk to us.
So when I heard that prompt, I was like, oh, this is easy. When you look at me, you see a woman of color, leaving college. Once I left New Jersey, so I grew up in New Jersey. Once I left New Jersey, I was essentially in the South for 20 plus years. So coming up to RIT, to the north, with the cold, all those great
Very
things.
cold.
We have this great sport of ice hockey. So like I said, being in the South for 20 years, we did not have ice hockey. There are not many people who look like me who play ice hockey. There are not many people who look like me who are administrators for ice hockey. So imagine when I walk into a room, well, then it wasn't walking because we were Zooming because it was 2021. And here I am at that time. I was 38 39 when I started here, maybe something like that. 38 maybe. Trying to do math again, not an engineer.
Not me.
Trying to add these years here. But so I was 38, Black woman, going onto a Zoom with a lot of white men and one white woman at that time. Again, never been around ice hockey, right? And so my credibility for most of them was shot before I even opened my mouth, right? Because what do I know about ice hockey? I might not know anything about ice hockey, but I know sports, I know leadership, I know culture, I know talent, I know management, right? So I know all of those things, and I know how to see gaps in what is missing in culture, the student athlete experience. I know how to see those things. And so, you know, sometimes when I spoke, you would see the faces of she doesn't know what she's talking about, or she doesn't know hockey. No, I don't know hockey. And still to this day, I do not know everything about hockey. But I have a Jeff who's right next to me who's telling me everything I need to know about hockey. And so that's all
Jeff.
Yeah, that's Jeff. I tell everyone all the time, I have a Jeff who knows hockey, and he knows everything, right? And so before I go into a meeting, I have my Jeff, and I have a conversation about hockey. And I learned that pretty quickly, so I could speak from an educated perspective about hockey, just because they thought she doesn't know anything. But I know sports, and I spent 20 plus years in it. And so for me, that was very quick and easy. And prior to being at RIT and being around hockey, I was a parliamentarian for a national organization that had 5,000 plus members, right? And I did that for 3 years. So I learned, you know, Robert's Rule of Orders, how to pass bylaws, how to vote on things, you know, what you need, and, you know, majority plus one. I learned all these things. So in this conference, it was at that time Atlantic Hockey, and it was just on the men's side. We had a men's division and women's division, 2 different conferences, same commissioner, a whole lot of rigmarole that we had to work through. We started talking bylaws, right? The last time the bylaws were ratified and updated, I was an undergrad. It's like, you're talking to me about bylaws from 2005. I was an undergrad in 2005, right? And so then they're trying to change these bylaws. And so I was easily able to insert myself and say, well, that's not the way you change things. That's not the way you vote. You cannot have 5 people and you have a group of 11 and you use the commissioner as your 6th vote to get to your majority. You can't do those things, right? And so I was able to insert myself when we talk about bylaws and rules and those things. Those bylaws still are not updated to this day. We're working on them still, but we have a new commissioner who's a woman, so she's moved us forward pretty quickly to get those done. But I was able to insert myself really quickly and say, hey, this is how we need to get stuff done. You also need to have a parliamentarian assigned. It can't just be a random person on the call who's running these things, and how to run a vote, how to properly document what this means, what the votes means, how to get it to the commissioner, how to show, get updated. So I was able to insert myself into that way and show I might not know hockey, but I know how to run things. And so for me, that was very simple to do that. And still to this day, even when I still walk into the room, we'll go to hockey meetings down in Naples. I am one of 3 administrators of color in Division I hockey.
Wow.
There's 3 of us. Right?
I want to go back to inserting yourself, because there's multiple layers to this, especially being a woman of color. There is given space that is taken up intentionally, and then there is assumed space that that just is there. How did you gain the courage to take up space that has traditionally been dominated by other groups?
I'll go with what my one thing that I wrote: difference is not a deficit, it's a leadership asset. Right? And so for me, I know what I'm talking about. Sometimes it just takes people to listen to me, and sometimes they don't listen to me if I'm in a space where you're not used to listening to someone who looks like me. And so I don't know if it was because I was a person of color. I think it was because I was a woman in that male space who happened to be a woman of color. And so I just lead from that and lead with intentionality. I'm not a quiet person, so anyone who knows me outside of this, I am not quiet. By any means. You can tell by the colors that I have on. I like to be bright. So if you saw me last week, I had on like red pants. I have orange pants. I have pink pants. I started to put on my whole orange jumpsuit today, but my 15-year-old told me that was too much. I mean,
they tried it.
She does all the time. When you said if you wanted to come back as someone in another life, it would be like my 15-year-old, because she lives a great life. That's who I would come back as in my next life. But I think just remembering that and leading intentionally and speaking up, especially when I'm in a room and I have the audience and the floor and the voice, I speak with purpose and passion, and so in conviction. So I never, try to go into anything timid. I'm going to go in there loud and proud, and sometimes I might be loud, proud, and wrong, but I'm going to stand on that loud, proud, and wrong, and mean it. But I also know, like, in that space, like I talked about that, Jeff, I learned how to build my advocates and allies in the room, have those conversations with them sometimes before I go in the room so they can advocate for me as well, and know what I'm talking about as well. But I also, like I said, I always find my one person who I might not know or might not be the content matter expert on that topic, but I will have my Jeff. And Jeff, I've built a great relationship with him, not only professionally, but personally. So I know he's always going to have my back in everything I do. And so before I walk into a room with those hockey administrators, I will go over everything we need to. And so I can speak from that level of, hey, she knows what she's doing. And do I know everything about hockey? No. Do I want to know everything about hockey? No. I have 25 sports programs. I don't want to know everything about every single one of those programs. It's a lot. But I know enough to be dangerous when I walk into any room now.
Thank you so much, Lauren. Now we're talking about advantages and disadvantages. Have you ever had to manage up?
I mean, yeah.
And explain what
I'm not the
managing up
CEO.
is.
You're always managing up. From the time you are a student through your entire career, you're always managing up and down. It's just a constant thing. Managing up as a science lead to just coincidentally, all 4 of the CEOs I've worked for have been men. They have all been first-time CEOs, and one's a lawyer, one was from marketing, one was from finance, and I forget where the other one was from. I think he was like a serial entrepreneur in general, but first time, being at the head. One of the things I had to learn was when to and when not to speak up, because guys, I love science. I want to tell you all about it. But understanding that when a leader asks me a direct question, they want the direct answer. They don't want the 10-minute answer. I want to give that to you because I want to share my knowledge, and I love doing that. So learning, with those managers what they actually want to hear, and then let them ask you for more, right? They're trying to get through their agenda and stuff. And so if you are like me and you have ADHD and you like talking a lot, agendas are great for us. So just, hey, they're trying to stay on point. I get it. I have been accused of diverting conversations multiple times. I had to learn tricks like, hey, if you have an idea, write it down and then see if you have time to talk about it. If not, that's okay. It doesn't have to be right now. It'll still be a good idea 2 hours from now. But yeah, when managing up, I think for me, and I don't know if this is men or women, but just knowing how much of the answer to give and how much to hold back. That's certainly been a lifetime learning process.
I'm seeing here one of the questions going. I'm going to give the full question for managing up. So I'll take this one. How do you effectively manage up in environments where leadership may traditionally look different from you? I've always been in environments before becoming a entrepreneur where I've never been in an organization except for once where there was someone who looked like me. And so the way how I navigated that is express your non-negotiables up front. Be very clear. And so once your non-negotiables are expressed, and you continue to express those, when it is time to give feedback to those who are above you, you say, hey, remember we spoke about this? And so it isn't like you're navigating into conflict, but it is, hey, remember why you hired me? And I said this then, and this is a moment where we could lead better together. I am a servant leader. I understand when to serve, but I also know when to say, halt, this does not feel good to me, and it does not look good for us. What is our primary objective here? What is the mission and the vision of the organization? And how can we come together to accomplish that thing? And so I position myself as the gift to the person who I am managing up. I make myself as an individual who cannot be fired. Hear this. Make sure that you are so valuable that they have to think twice about getting rid of you. And if they have to, Always cultivate yourself in professional development, as we heard today, in AI, in what's new, because you can start over. There's no end. Cultivate yourself, know when to speak up, know when to be quiet, but always build. Managing up. You want to talk about it?
Well, let's see. So, managing up, I guess my experience with that might be a lot different because, again, it's a family business. So I'm going to, I guess, switch the question around just a little bit from that. I feel like as a leader, as a woman leader, it's our responsibility to bust through or bust out, break up stereotypes. And I have a story I want to share in just a moment. But, you know, a lot of these roles that we're in that are normally held by men, traditionally held by men, I think it's important. I think it's important for there to be visibility and for women with similar interests to see, yeah, that's something that maybe I could do too, or something similar. So I feel like us just even being in these leadership positions helps to widen the path. So here's my story. It happened yesterday, so I think it happened for a reason.
It's fresh.
It's fresh. So I'm getting ready to leave for work, and the propane truck pulls up. And our propane tank is it's in an area that's hard to see. It's in a hedgerow. So my husband, he's like, I'm just going to go outside, check in with the driver, make sure, you know, that they know where it is. So anyway, he goes out, he comes back in. And I said, were you able to help him out? And he's like, help him? It was her. And that was like, oh my gosh, like there it is, hardwired. You know, I don't think I've ever actually seen a woman propane truck driver. And so it just didn't even occur to me that that would be, you know, the case. So it was a learning moment for me. And when those happen, because occasionally they do, it gives me pause. And I think as a leader, it's just a reminder that, at least for me, I need to be more open-minded when it comes to that.
So we are down to our last question. And this is deeply personal. I can't wait to share, but I'll allow you all, each of you, to share. Where have you found mentors, sponsors, or trusted advisors to lean on in your network?
I'll start. So for me, I call them my board of directors. And so they all, it's a very big table. Like, I have a lot of personality, so I need different people to be able to come to that table and be a part of it. But they come from inside of athletics, outside of athletics. You have a lot of women. There are a lot of men at my table. There are a lot of white women. There are a lot of white men. There are a lot of black women. There are a lot of black men, Hispanic women. I have all kinds of people at my board of directors, and the head and CEO of that board of directors is my mom. Because everything still has to go through her to this day. It's like, there's not a day that goes by that I don't talk to that woman. And I love her. That is my person still to this day. My mom was a single parent. She raised 3 kids, and then me. I tell everyone I am the golden child of the 3, and I'm also the middle child. So that should explain a lot. My sister and brother won't agree about the golden child thing, but I'll just say I'm her favorite. But in that board of directors, there's different people who can come up and have different conversations with me about where I am. And I'm always willing to listen, and they meet me where I am. They never address me from a place of you're wrong, but how about you look at this way? And so I always sit back and listen. I always go to that board. There's never a job that I'm applying for that I do not take to that board of directors. Now, everyone on that board might not get that call, but I'm at least calling 4 or 5 of them to talk about, hey, what is this position? What do you think? And I'll give you the example of this role here at RIT. I was not planning on applying for this job. The search firm reached out. It was the search firm I'm very, very close to. I still use them to this day. Parker search firm based out of Atlanta. I used them for a football search at my previous institution. And they said, hey, you should apply for this job. And I took it to my board, and everyone was like, it's cold there, girl. You know you are not going to thrive. I don't do cold well. I do not do cold well still to this day. And so I was like, you know what? You guys are right. I'm not going to. And then the search firm came back and was like, I really need you to take a look at this. Now, again, the leader of the search firm, Daniel Parker, really trust him. And so I took it back. So I took it to another group, and they were like, you should just look at it. You know, you want to be an AD. At that time, I was in I did like 6 different searches for AD jobs. So there was like multiple going on at the same time. And my biggest thing was it was cold in Rochester. So it was not. And my board agreed. And I'm like, you guys probably should have said something different. But went back to him the second time and told him what the search firm said. So sat down with him that weekend. They give you like a 5-pager thing to answer questions for the search firm. So I go through this whole process, and I come to RIT. I should have known it was still cold when I came in May, and I'm wearing a jacket, and it was freezing. And I'm sitting outside to do interviews because it was COVID time. So I'm sitting with blankets shivering in what was my business dress suit from the South is not the same as a business dress suit from the North. Let's just say that. And I go back to my board and I'm like, I just don't think that's going to be for me. The cold, the weather, I'm taking my child out of another environment. I'm moving her, all these things. And they're like, just give it an opportunity. And the one person who was really hounding me she's the AD at Michigan Tech, Susan Jarnigat, still a very, very good friend and mentor to me to this day. And she was like, you should really take it and look at it because there's not a lot of opportunities that you're going to get to lead not only a very, very large Division III program, but Division I hockey. Remember I just talked about hockey a second ago? Yep. It all comes around. And she was at a hockey school. I had went and visited her literally 3 months before I took this role. I was out at Michigan Tech standing on Lake Michigan snowshoeing. A black girl snowshoeing on Lake Michigan, right?
I want to do it though.
Baby, it was different.
I'm here for it.
It was very different. And so she was really pushing me. And when I went back to that board, they were like, well, how did it go? And it went really well when I was here, but I wasn't convinced. And they were like, you have to step out on faith. You have to take an opportunity. This is very different. Coming back to the North is not what I wanted to do. I was a South girl. I like short sleeves. I like flip-flops. I like shorts. I like the beach. I like long walks. No, I'm just kidding. But, they're just challenging me to do something different because literally every job I had applied for was below the Mason-Dixon line. There was no coming to minus anything degrees. And so they really challenged me to do something different. And I'm here, and I've been here for 5 years, and I'm thriving in this role, and I love this role. But if it was not for her sitting on that board, speaking up the loudest, saying, hey, you need to do this and challenge yourself and step outside of your comfort zone, not listening to those who said, you don't want to go because it's cold, they're all sitting around that table. And so, I lean into that group literally every single day. There's not a lot of professional decisions that I make without going to that board. There's not a personal decision that I make without my mom, and my sister sits on that board too. And those are the people who drive me, and they thrive. They support me not only professionally but personally as well, and my child. So I love that group of people I have. I love that they will tell me no. They will tell me when I'm wrong. They will tell me when I'm right. They'll hand me tissues when I'm crying. They will push me down the stairs if I need to be pushed down the stairs to have a wake-up moment as well. And so I lean on them in every single thing I do. And I love that group for sure.
Thank you for sharing.
My mentoring, I think, both being mentored and being the mentor, kind of surprised me. I didn't really think I needed one at first. So I told you that I was in analytical chemistry and I was exploring food science. Well, in some big CPG companies, consumer packaged goods, my apologies, you can do a bubble assignment. I wanted to do a 3-month assignment in the food science department to really make sure this is something I wanted to do. My Chinese male manager said no. That was it, just no. Not maybe something we could build towards, no. So I ended up getting a female mentor within the organization who coincidentally happened to be above him. And I met with her every month for a year. And after a year, magically, she helped me. That's what that was. I was able to do a bubble assignment, and he looked at me like, angry face. What am I going to do without you? I'm like, figure it out. I don't know. Let me grow in my career. So no wasn't no. No was not right now. And I couldn't go through that route. He was my direct manager. But that woman helped me. She helped me in my career. She helped me make that step. And I wouldn't have been able to do it without her because I didn't see that path and she was able to get me there. So, don't give up on something because someone tells you no. I like to say, not now. Change the no to a not now. Maybe it's not the right time. Maybe there's other skills you need to build to show that you can do that job. So that's one of my favorite. And I do also mentor. I've been asked a couple different times, especially in cannabis. Cannabis is a generally male field, so there are plenty of females to mentor in this space as well.
To me, it really was all about developing relationships. So through my training, my medical school neurology residency, there were 4 physicians. They were all men, but I stayed in touch with them as I moved on in my career. And I had spent enough time getting to know them, and they got to know me. And it was so helpful to be able to pick up the phone and, hey, I want to do this. Does that make sense, or am I nuts? And they would be very honest with me and very helpful. As I went on in my career, I did the same thing. I came here. I wanted to get to know the chief operating officer, the head physician, the medical director, and I spent time with them. And then over time, you begin to realize who's going to be helpful and who's not, and you can stick with the ones who are. You mentioned also it's very important to develop support. So don't come up with, an idea that they're gonna think is crazy until you've gone to some other people and gotten buy-in, so that when you bring that to the table, you've got support within the institution as well. I think the other person that was extremely helpful to me was my husband. I have 3 children. My husband was a pharmacist. And when I had to make decisions, at one time, the program was growing here. I felt pressure to do some research. I felt pressure to be on the national scene. And I felt like I couldn't be a good parent, a good wife, and a good physician and run the business here and do all of these things at the same time. So I mentioned this because at the time I had a lot of angst about giving something up. And I had people call me and say, hey, you're not going to the meetings, you're not giving talks, you're not doing this. And it's like, I can't. I've got enough going on here, and I've made the decision. My family comes first, and my community comes second. And right now, I think that's where I'm focusing. And I don't regret it. But it was not an easy decision at the time. And I had a lot of support from my husband. I have to mention something about my mother, because my mother, she was always my role model. But my mother was 45 when I was born, and my dad was 53. I was the youngest by 20 years in the family. Neither of my parents finished high school. My mom was very bright, but had a rough childhood. Her mother passed away when she was young. But my mom, she got a job as a manager in a department store eventually by working her way up. My mom always had a smile on her face. She could take lemons and make lemonade. She could make lemonade out of anything. And as she went through adversity, my dad then passed away, and they were very, very close. I saw how she managed with that and how she was able to channel her energy to helping people in her community. And so she will forever be my role model.
Take out your pens and paper. I'm going to give you some things. 1, and I'm so inspired by everyone. When you create your personal board, that's the individuals who you trust. And I'm so grateful that you brought that up. It shouldn't just be your family, right? And as you said, people who have come along aside you in your career. This is how you create the elite self-board for yourself. Yes, it's good to have family, but there also has to be balance of people who do not look like you and think like you. Also, think about building a board that is multi-generational. The youth have so much to offer, and they are so honest, they will tell you about yourself. Also, have a board that doesn't love you so much. Hear this. Someone who loves you too much will tell you the truth, will not tell you the truth. They might be your biggest cheerleader and cheer you off of the next opportunity that you weren't supposed to be in. Those are the individuals who are able to pinpoint what your weaknesses are, what your strengths are, what's threatening you, that they can do a full SWOT analysis on you. They communicate differently. So to be a leader and an executive, you have to develop your executive presence, and that has to be, you have to learn how to navigate that across industry and across communication styles. 2, get a coach. A coach that doesn't have a coach, please don't talk to me. Here's why. If you have not committed to your self-growth, how am I going to trust you with mine? You have committed to become obsolete. Why should I trust you? Get a coach and ask your coach if they have a coach. Additionally, invest in yourself. You are a brand. Everyone in this room, believe it or not, is an entrepreneur. The business is you. Do take some time out, because men are catapulted faster because they are given what do you want to be when you grow up? I want to be a police officer. I want to be a firefighter. You can do it. Oh my gosh, you're so strong. And then we're told you should be, but the narrative for women is you should be more softer, kinder, quieter. And then over time, when that is told to you over and over again, you become that thing. So now, to move forward, you have to do a brand analysis on yourself. Know what you're good at, know what you're not good at. Know what you have time for, know what you do not have time for. Process your no's and process your yeses. Speak to people on your board who are different races, different ethnicities, different backgrounds and lifestyles, and let them pressurize you. Because when it is time to climb the ladder, when it's time to go to your next, you cannot cry and crumble because you don't know how to communicate. We are in a time when we're talking about AI, and you can look this up. And thank you so much, Dr. Monahan, for bringing this up. In the next 5 years, we are going to be looking at a solopreneur who is actually going to be a billionaire. Probably less than 5 years because of AI. And so when you do a brand analysis on yourself of what you are good at and what you can do, that is a business. And then go back to the drawing board. We always sit in those strategic plans with our organizations. Do a strategic plan on yourself. And if you can't see 5 years from now, that's far, do something called wildly important goals. They're called WIGs. What are the 2 to 3 things that you can execute in the next 12 to 18 months to get you to where you need to be? So you may not be the billionaire at year 5, but what are the things that you need to do today to get you there? Think as a business. Think as an entrepreneur, because you are. Also, take credit for what you do. It's yours. It came out of your head. Be proud about it. If you turn in a proposal, put your name on it. Written by. Own things. It's yours. We have been building society from the beginning of time. Don't be afraid to take it. And that is why we are here. And so with that, and with the wisdom and the knowledge and the love each other and love yourself, we are going to break for 5 minutes, and we're going to come back and hear from our next panelist. Thank you, ladies, for your wisdom. Thank you so much. So, our next session is Speaking Up at Work. Power your voice with intention. Dr. Bain is the Assistant Professor of Management at the Saunders College of Business at the Rochester Institute of Technology. Her research focuses on workplace voice, how employees decide when to speak up, we've heard about that today, when to stay silent, and what helps ideas be heard and credited. She studies the social dynamics that shape influence in groups, including psychological safety, workplace climate, and gender dynamics. Through her research and workshops, Kristen helps individuals and organizations understand how to use their voices effectively and create environments where more people feel empowered to contribute. With that, please let us welcome Dr. Bain to the stage.
Thank you. So yes, I'm Dr. Kristen Bain. I'm very excited to be here today. I have been hearing about Power Your Potential since I started at RIT about 6 years ago. And so this is a really great opportunity. And I'm excited to talk to you. So as was mentioned, I study voice, and I study gender dynamics, and I study workplace climate. And I do this because before becoming an academic, I worked in various industries where sometimes I felt that my voice was heard, sometimes I felt it wasn't, and sometimes I wasn't sure if I should even speak up. So I am hopeful that some of what I have to talk about today will echo what you've been hearing earlier throughout the day, and then maybe give you a little bit more insight into what the research has to say. This is a new clicker for me, hold on. Oh, there we go. All right, so I want to start off by reading a few quotes that you may have heard of before. There is power in being able to speak up, even when it's difficult. Speak your mind, even though your voice shakes. The worst speech you'll ever give will be far better than the one you never did. Women speaking up for themselves and for those around them is the strongest force we have to change the world. Now, many of you hearing these quotes might feel inspired, motivated, ready to take on the world, but some of you might actually feel unseen, skeptical, cynical. And I think that that's fair. How many of you have ever been in a situation where you're in a meeting, the team is trying to solve a problem. You have done your homework, you have prepared, and you have come up with a solution. Not only that, but it's a really good solution. So when the time comes, you raise your hand, you speak up, you share that solution, and then nothing. The group just sort of moves on. About 10 minutes later, someone else raises their hand. They're like, I just thought of something. And then they say the exact same idea that you said 10 minutes before that. And you're like, what the hell? Especially because now, instead of people just ignoring it, you hear, great idea, we should do that. I wonder why we didn't think of that before. And you're like, what just happened? So often we hear advice like, speak up, speak often, and don't worry about those that at this point cannot understand, as they can never unhear what we tell them. But they can't unhear something they never really listened to in the first place either. Speak up, be confident, lean in. A lot of times this is the advice that we as women get. But as Jane Goodall said, it doesn't actually take much to be considered a difficult woman. That's why there are so many of us. If you've been in the workplace for a while, you might have tried leaning in. You might have pushed and advocated and asserted, and it didn't work. Or you might have taken a different step. Instead of leaning in, you might have stopped. You might have held back or even taken a step back. And that's not because you don't understand that your voice is powerful or that you should speak up. It's because you do understand the value of your voice. But you also understand the room. You understand the politics. You understand the risks and the consequences. Whoopsie. So why do some women speak up frequently and other women don't? Or why does the same woman speak up often in one group, but in another group, she keeps silent. It's not because she doesn't understand the value of the voice. Again, we're not idiots. We know that our voice matters. We've been navigating difficult challenges throughout history, and we've done it relatively successfully. The reason that people hold up sometimes and they don't speak up is that we recognize the context that we're in when we have the opportunity to voice. These quotes, this advice, often forget that we're not isolated, we're situated in specific situations. And it's because we understand that we decide whether or not we're going to speak up. It's not a personality trait. It's not lack of knowledge. It's a risk decision. Think of a time where you had something to say and it felt risky. Why? What made you hesitate? Before I became an academic, so in my previous life, I worked at a school for children with developmental disabilities and behavioral disorders. Most of our students had problems with aggression. That's why they were at the school. And children might be nominal in some of their cases, as we took kids from 5 all the way through 21, and quite a few of our students were 15, 16, 17 through 21. Shortly after I started, I met another employee who in his second job was a bouncer at a club. So I called him Bouncer because I'm creative like that. I actually don't remember his real name. A few weeks after I started, or a couple months, I was in a situation where he was the lead. We always had one person designated to handle a situation, especially when a student was in crisis. So the student's in crisis, he's in lead, I'm watching him, and I start to feel uncomfortable. The way he's talking to the student, the way he's moving, his body language, and the amount of force to use when we did have to actually go hands-on. I felt uncomfortable. I went home that night and I was thinking about it and perseverating on it, and I'm like, what do? I'm like, I feel like I should speak up. I should tell someone about this incident because I don't think it's right. Like, it's just not sitting well with me. And so I was like, okay, I'm gonna do it. And then I get to work the next day and I don't do it. I don't tell anybody. A few weeks later, in another incident, an employee who had longer tenure, he'd been there for a while, he did end up speaking up against the bouncer, and the bouncer went back to bouncing at clubs. But that still sits with me today. Why didn't I speak up? Like, I regret that so deeply because I knew something was wrong. I knew I had a responsibility to do something about it, and I just couldn't. The nice thing about being an academic is you get to learn terms and theories that put into words those things that you feel, those things you kind of understand but can't quite explicate, and it makes them feel valid. You feel more justified. One of the things that I've learned in my study is backlash, gender backlash. It is a real thing. This happens when women violate stereotypical expectations. Sometimes these expectations are that they act assertively, they act manly, they speak up, they challenge the status quo, they advocate for themselves. And other times it's that you don't seem warm or friendly or nurturing, right? When that happens, people oftentimes punish those women. They rate them as less likable, less promotable, and more difficult. Another reason that people don't speak up that resonates with me is futility. If we know no one's gonna listen to us anyway, if we know that they're just gonna ignore us and nothing's gonna change, then why should I invest my effort into this? Why should I speak up? We're only going to put time and energy into those things that we feel are worthwhile. What I think it's important that we remember and that we appreciate is that silence is often the rational response to the situation. So if we're looking at the situation, there are certain signals or features or factors that might convey to women that it's a bad idea to speak up, or at least that it's more risky. In my study of voice, there's sort of this assumption, like it just goes around, women don't speak up as much as men. This didn't really align with my own personal experiences, but again, I worked in human services, very female dominated, so I'm like, okay, maybe it's a little bit unique to that. But as I did more and more research, I started to realize that there's very few studies that actually show that women speak less than men. In fact, Harvard Business Review published a series of articles where they identified myths about speaking up, and one of them is the myth that women are more silent than men. And yet, this idea persists. So my colleagues and I did what all academics do when they're sort of confronting this paradox or this mystery, and we decided to run some studies. So our first study that we ran was a survey. We surveyed 2,554 working adults. We first asked them about the incivility within their organization, because what we were thinking is that maybe women generally speak as much as men unless something tells them that they shouldn't. And one of the more insidious, pervasive, common ways that people shut other people down is through incivility. So incivility are these disrespectful behaviors, they're the rude behaviors, but they stay just under that line where you're like, that's wrong, where you can point that out and be like, that person shouldn't have done that thing. It's just under there. So instead you're like, why did you do that? What did you mean by that? Are you just a jerk? Did I deserve that? Are you kidding? Do you just have a really bad sense of humor? Right? It leaves this ambiguity there, which makes it hard to address. This is that person who like says that joke and it's like, I'm just kidding, don't be so sensitive. And you're like, all right, but not funny. So we thought maybe incivility shows women that it's not safe to talk. So we asked these people, men and women, tell us about the incivility in your group. How uncivil are your supervisors? How uncivil are your colleagues? And then we asked them, when you think about speaking up to this group, how much backlash do you expect? How much do you expect to be punished for saying what you say? And then a couple weeks later, we sent a second survey and we measured their silence. We're like, in your group, how often do you withhold your contributions? How often do you keep them to yourself? And just because I can't not note this, we also measured these things. Sorry, academia. In our second survey, we used 750, again, working adults. This time we decided instead of measuring incivility, we would manipulate it. This gives us greater control so we can make more causal assertions about what's actually causing any differences we might find. And so the way we manipulated this is we recruited a bunch of people and we said, all right, you are going to perform a brainstorming task with some other people online. And during this task, you're going to brainstorm names for pasta. And then we separated them, they didn't know this, but into the civil and the uncivil condition. What they also didn't know was that the group that they were interacting with was just a series of pre-written text messages by us, because this is how we could manipulate incivility. So we manipulate the incivility. People in the chat, they see their ideas, they see other people's ideas, and then they and the other people in the group commented on those ideas. In the civil condition, the comments were things like, okay, cool, or great, or that sounds like that could be a pasta name. And then in the uncivil condition, it was like, whoa, that's terrible, or can't anybody come up with a good idea in this group, or that's the worst idea we've heard yet. And then, similar to the other study, we measured their expected backlash. This time, we're like, okay, if you were to be with this group in the future, how much do you think you would get backlash for speaking up? And then we asked them, if you were with this group in the future, how much do you think you would withhold those contributions, right? How much do you think you would stay silent? So I'm going to show you figures from the chat study. They're just a little bit cleaner, but our results were consistent across. So here in this chart, we have differences in anticipated backlash. So we anticipated backlash. Down here, we separate out the two conditions. And then for ease of visual, the pink are the ladies and the blue are the men. You can see in the civil condition, women anticipated a tiny bit more backlash than men, but honestly not much, and it wasn't statistically different. But when we move to the uncivil condition, then you see women have a huge jump in how much backlash they would expect. Men, we thought, interestingly, also expected more gender backlash, which seemed odd, but, you know, men do men. But it was a really notable difference. So then we're like, okay, well, what about silence? So we looked at that. Again, we have silence over on your left, civil and uncivil, women and men. And what we thought was really interesting is that in the civil condition, there's no real difference between how much women would withhold their contributions and how much men would. It's pretty similar. I mean, I guess tiny bit less for women, but that's just noise. Then you get into the uncivil condition, and it's a whole different story. Women are like, hell no, I'm not speaking up to those jerks. It affected both genders, but it definitely affected women more. This showed us that it's not about women, it's about the context. So if you look at other studies, they also show that context matters, but in this case, unclear norms. When the norms of the group are unclear, women are more likely to sort of hold back a little. And it's not necessarily because they're afraid, it's because they're just not really sure what the right thing to do is, and they're aware that a misstep could have consequences. So in one study, they measured how often women versus men would request deadline extensions, and as long as it was sort of normalized that deadline extension requests were fine, there weren't any differences. But as soon as you sort of had that ambiguity, then women started holding back a little bit. They asked less. When they looked into why, it seemed that it was actually mainly because women didn't want to seem like they were slacking, and they didn't want to overburden their colleagues. There was a little bit of evidence that they also were nervous that asking would lead to consequences, but it was mostly that they were aware that there could be impacts beyond just taking that extension. Okay, so we have context that matters, but so do our experiences. How many of you have heard the phrase, like, once burned, twice shy? Right? Many of us have been in the workplaces for a while. We've tried leaning in, we've spoken up, and then we got punished for it. Is it any surprise that when that happened, we became more hesitant to speak up again in the future? So even if you are in an organization or a group that's perfectly respectful and civil, even if the norms are very clear, some women might hold back a little bit because they know what can happen. They've experienced it before. So we have structural constraints, we have sort of personal experiences, and then we have relational aspects that can also keep us from speaking up as much as we would like. In general, across society, men tend to be valued more highly than women, especially as professionals, especially in the workplace. So women are already sort of coming in with slightly lower status. If you then add in other types of status, like roles or positions, or formal power to that mix, that can really highlight to women the risks associated with speaking up or leaning in. In healthcare, one of the major sort of areas of research is how to get people to speak up more. Because what happens is that due to status differences, nurses won't speak up even when the doctor is about to make a huge mistake. And I mean like cutting off the wrong limb, huge, right? They just don't say anything. And what the studies have shown is that these women, usually nurses, will say, I didn't think it was my place. He's up here, and I'm down here. What right do I have to question? And that leads to really tragic consequences. But women are also not without resources. So one of the resources that we have that we can draw on is our expertise. Women are educated. Actually, right now, more educated than men. They're educated, they're experienced, they have really good expertise. And in fact, in some fields, because the expectations for men are so much higher than they are for women, women have to work that much harder to prove themselves. So by the time they get into an industry or into a certain position, they're actually more expert than a lot of their male colleagues, because they've really had to push that. So developing expertise is one way that women are able to create this resource for them. It gives them legitimacy. Another resource that women have are strong relationships. So this really hit home for me when I started at RIT, because it was fall 2020, middle of COVID. This was my first academic position. I'm from Denver, so all my family and friends are way down there. And I was really struggling. Like, I felt lost, I felt kind of lonely, I felt very much like an imposter. And luckily, RIT puts on lots of different events, and I attended them virtually, and I started to make some of these connections. And then I had colleagues who reached out and started making these connections. And so as soon as we were able to start meeting again in person, I started a social group for women faculty anywhere in RIT, which we called Cocktail Collaboration. It's a research group. You know, you got to do things like replication's important, so, and you gotta diversify, got to make comparisons. So, yeah, so we started Cocktail Collaboration, and over the years, this has become a huge part of my, at least, feeling of success at RIT, because I have people I can go to. They provide emotional support. They provide professional support, right? The connections we make, the relationships we build can really allow us to augment those resources. How many of you have ever heard of Kat Green? Anyone? She has an interesting sort of professional trajectory. Not a lot of formal education, but she ultimately ended up being president and CEO of companies like Hooters, Cinnabon, Mrs. Fields Cookies, which the last two places I could never work at. That would be terrible for me. In an interview, she really attributed a lot of the success that she had to networking. She argued that networking is essential for growing in your career. But she had a really interesting perspective on what is effective networking. And this resonated with me, because I don't know about you guys, but I actually sort of hate networking. Because when I think about networking, I think about like going somewhere with those like tables that you can just put your drink on, and you have business cards, you like hand them out and you shake people's hands. Not my jam, just not my jam. And it's not hers either. She argues that effective networking is about finding people and seeing how you can help them. You build social capital by doing things for people, for being helpful, for being essential, for being there. And as you do that, that gives you access to people that you can then call on later. You can pull back some of those favors, or you can use them to connect you to other people. So it's not necessarily just about meeting as many people as you can. It goes back to that second point. It's about building strong relationships. Again, sort of related to this is the idea of allies. So allies are the people in our life that we can go to where they're going to lend their support. They can back a woman's play. They can create a coalition. They can intervene when someone is acting particularly problematic, or just provide general backup when we make a move. Sometimes our allies come because we have mutual interests. Sometimes they come from our social connections. And sometimes they come because of values. So I know of one instance where in an organization, a man sent out widely distributed an email with some pretty crappy misogynistic content to it, but then framed it as a joke. And it was very offensive. And a woman read that email, she was on the thread, and she's like, this is a problem, right? Culture is defined by the worst tolerated behavior. So she felt compelled to say something, but she was pretty junior, and so she was worried about it. Thinking that I need to do something, but I'm not sure what, or if it's a good idea, or if it's a terrible idea, she ended up calling her supervisor. And her supervisor listened to her and was like, I completely agree. This is a huge problem. This is not okay. And if you want to do something about it, you have my full support. And she was like, great. So she jotted off a nice little reply email, sort of outlining the problem with the content and how it sort of perpetuates stereotypes. And, maybe we shouldn't do these kinds of things. And shortly after that, her supervisor and a few other colleagues sent in their replies echoing what she had said. Now, what I like about this example is that when she reached out to her supervisor, he didn't say, you're right, I'll take care of it. He's like, I've got your back. He didn't white knight. He didn't rescue. In this case, it was better for her to be able to assert herself, and she was able to do that because of her allies. She knew that she wasn't going into it alone. That is an excellent resource. Another resource that women can often draw on are supportive leaders or mentors. Leaders and mentors can act as powerful resources because they can provide advice or they can role model. So in one study that actually did find gender differences in voice, it was in a very male-dominated field, and they found that for women who felt unsure about their ability to voice in that group, after watching one of their leaders speak up, that increased their confidence that they could do it as well. It was seeing another woman do it and do it successfully. It not only signaled to them that, sure, you can speak up, and it's going to be received at least okay, it gave them insight into how to speak up in that particular situation, right? Their leader, who's sort of with them in the trenches, understood the dynamics and was like, this is how you can sort of navigate those. And that allowed women to increase their confidence and speak up more. The last resource I want to highlight, although there are many more, is women's reputation, status, or power. When you know that people respect you, it's easier to lean into a situation. It's easier to pursue your goals or speak up. Because when you have more status, or even better, actual power, it's less likely that people are going to be able to punish you. It's less likely that you'll get backlash. It's also more likely that you're going to be able to have the impact that you hope to have by speaking up. So status, power, if you have those can be really helpful. As I've been talking about this idea of resources versus constraints, what I've been sort of dancing around is that for a lot of women, as we navigate the workplace, there is this sort of balancing act that we're always constantly doing, where we're comparing how or what type of resources do I have, and in this situation, what are the risks and constraints? If we make this sort of judgment and we decide that our resources are equal to or bigger than our constraints, we're more likely to speak up. In contrast, if we look around and we're like, no, my resources are not great enough to overcome these constraints, then we're more likely to withhold. So as women are making these judgments, they're deciding, and again, a lot of this is probably unconscious, but we're trying to figure out what to do. So what I love is that research has given us insights into what a lot of successful women have done. And one strategy that's been employed that people don't always recognize as a strategy is to wait for the opportune moment. You have things to say. You have value to add. It might not be the right time in that moment, or those might not be the right people. That doesn't mean that by not speaking up, you're withdrawing or retreating or hiding. It just means that you're waiting until you can actually have the impact that you want. And maybe that means you develop your resources. Right? Maybe it's like, okay, I'm not ready here yet in this situation, so I need to build allies. I need to build my relationships. I need to showcase how smart and competent I am. Which leads us to another strategy that a lot of women use, which is showcasing their expertise and credentials. So because when others see how knowledgeable you are, how competent you are, they're less likely to resist the attempts you make to influence them or get your voice heard. It can be really helpful to showcase your credentials and how smart you are. There's some research on women directors in corporate boardrooms, like corporate. This is like weirdly a tricky thing for me to say, but like there's a board of directors, and then the women on those boards of directors. They use this tactic a lot. So a lot of the women will take time to get extra prepared. They'll make sure they have facts and figures that supports their viewpoint. They will start off by highlighting their expertise or credentials. They make sure that people know that they actually do have the competence and legitimacy to be making these contributions. Again, relationships. People use the relationships that they have. Remember, whether or not you decide to speak up is a risk calculus. And one of the most powerful ways that you can support that is by not going at it alone. Sometimes that might mean going to someone that you trust before a meeting and running an idea in front of them. Maybe they'll help you refine it. Maybe they'll point out some political pitfalls you didn't think of. Or maybe they're like, that's a great idea. I'll back you if you say it. You have my support. Now you've changed the equation. Now it's not one person speaking up, it's two. Relationships also matter because influence depends on access. And sometimes we may not have access to the people that we need to influence. So we might go to a colleague and say, hey, when you meet with blah, 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 can you tell them this? Or can you connect me with that person? It's using those connections to get where you need to go to make sure that your voice has the most impact. Okay, managing the audience. This is another way people reduce this risk. Remember, because one of the main reasons women experience backlash is because they're violating expectations, managing the audience can be a way of offsetting some of that. So for women who need to act assertively, they might also signal that they're warm and friendly and communal, right? They find that balance. In other words, it isn't about the idea in this case. It's about changing the interpretation of the one delivering it so that people don't mistake your assertiveness as being bitchy. Because even though that's on them, it also limits our impact, right? This is the reality that we're navigating. They did this study with product managers and creatives. The product managers were mostly women and the creatives were mostly men. And The product managers needed to get the creatives to actually execute the vision that the client wanted. And the creatives were like, no, this is my artistic vision. You cannot touch it. And so they had to try to navigate this. And they tried different techniques. And one of the strategies that some of the women used was managing the audience. So they protected their egos. They filtered the feedback. They reassured them that, of course, they were brilliant, but maybe if they just make this tweak, they know they can do this, right? Some of them went so far as to offer emotional support or bring in treats. And they found that this helped them manage these creatives. It gave them the influence to get their job done. Now, I'm not saying you should bring cupcakes in to every meeting. That's ridiculous. This tactic can be used a lot more subtly. So some leaders might make sure that they frame feedback in a way that is emphasizing this sort of communal aspect. I'm worried that if we go this route, it will have downstream consequences for our clients. Or they might make efforts to connect with people outside of high-stakes meetings. Talk about their families, right? Have those personal connections. Build that sort of social capital through relational work. Related to this, reframing goals. People are much more receptive to women who act assertively if they do it on behalf of other people. That fits our expectation that women should be communal. They should care about other people. They're less receptive if women assert on their own behalf. So what some women will do is they'll reframe that assertion to make sure that the emphasis is on how this will impact other people. So that way they're advocating for others. It's that whole mama bear sort of stereotype. They'll lean into that a little bit. And again, this is just a tactic to help maximize the impact that their voice has. Another way that some women manage this is through resistance. I like this one. I think this research is kind of cool. In some fields, there are really strong cultural signals about what would constitute like an in-group member. So IT, for example, has really clear norms about nerdiness. You need to be a geek to be a part of this. And a lot of times they do that through their dress. It's informal, graphic t-shirts and jeans. It's very casual, but it's also very consistent. So when women take on IT professional roles, some of the ways that they resist is they choose to dress in a way that they feel is in line with their identity. So they dress femininely instead of wearing the cartoon t-shirts with the ironic sayings on them. It's a small gesture, but it helps to set the stage that I can be an IT professional and not look like you. I can look like me and still be this. The study also found, I think this is kind of cool too, that women in these roles oftentimes resisted the managerial track. So whereas being a manager is oftentimes like a higher status position, in IT, technical roles oftentimes have more prestige and more status. And so one sort of way of maintaining this gender inequality was to push women into managerial roles. So as women recognized this, they resisted. They stayed as techs so that they could maintain that status. They fought for that credibility and that legitimacy. In some occasions, women may directly challenge the issue that they're running into. So in a meeting where they're looking at hiring people, they might point out the fact that everyone they're interviewing is male and say, why is that? Or they might highlight how really the same piece of feedback or the same behavior is getting conveyed differently to men versus women and call that out. It's much easier to get the elephant out of the room if you acknowledge it exists. Not everyone can do all these strategies or all the time. Again, it's a balance between our resources and our constraints that we have to navigate. Oopsie. So the goal isn't to be braver. The goal is to change the equation. Rather than say that we should always speak up, always voice, sometimes the question that we should, or the goal we should really be pursuing is, let's figure out how we can have an impact when we do. In Obama's first term, he had some women staffers, and some of you may have read about this in the news, and they felt that they didn't have a lot of influence. They would voice, and their ideas would be dismissed, they would be ignored, and then they also didn't have great access to the president, so a lot of their ideas never reached his ears. But in worst case scenarios, their ideas did reach his ears, but because they weren't the ones in the meeting, those ideas got credited to their male colleagues instead. The women, rightfully, got sick of this. And they said, okay, we got to do something about this. So they got together and they said, it's harder to ignore something when it's emphasized by someone else. So they're like, all right, anytime one of us has an idea, another one of us will echo that idea, making sure to give the original woman credit. Let's make it harder to steal these ideas. And so that's what they did. And by the end of the first term, they felt that this strategy had drastically increased their influence in the administration. And, I mean, there's probably some truth to that, because in his second term, there was much greater gender parity in the top staffers in his administration. All right, cool anecdote, but I am an academic. I don't take anecdotes as at face value. So my team and I were like, okay, is this true? So we do what academics do, and we ran like 12 studies for this question. Like, we tried all sorts of different things, and we found really, really consistent results that indeed the Obama staffers seem to be onto something. So borrowing their term, we called it amplification. Public endorsement of another's contribution while giving them credit. In our studies, we found that when someone spoke up and their idea was dismissed or ignored, and then someone else amplified that idea, that person who originally spoke up was seen as more communal. They were given higher status, and their ideas were seen as higher quality. Now, what I think is really interesting about this research is our effects that we found for the person who did the amplifying. In this case, they also seemed more communal. They seemed more competent. They had higher status. And we found this effect whether they had low initial status, regardless of their gender, and regardless of the content of the message that they were amplifying. What this research really indicates is that it's not about our individual voices so much as it's about working together. Whoops. The problem with the lean-in philosophy is it suggests that you're the problem. The lack of success is because you're not trying hard enough. It's not about the structure, it's not about the society, it's about what you do. And this places a huge burden on women, because not only are they somehow responsible for the situation, they're now responsible for fixing it and solving gender inequity while they're at it. In this talk, I think there's a lot of different messages you can sort of come away with. And what I want to emphasize is that you are not broken. This is not your fault. And it's extremely unfair that you have to navigate this. What I'm trying to highlight is that women have come up with ways of acting out their agency to make sure that when they speak up, it matters. And I think that that's important because I'm tired of the message that we're broken, and I'm tired of the message that it's our job to fix it. But that also doesn't mean that we aren't powerful in our own way, and that we're not smart, and that we're not making good decisions all the time, because we are. Which is why I think there's hope in the world, right? We don't have to go this alone. Especially when we work together, we're able to maximize our power. We can develop our resources. We can find ways to start limiting some of those constraints or risks that we face when we speak up. Especially with amplification, what you're signaling is that when people speak, they're heard and they're valued. And so when someone sees that, they're more likely to speak up. And then ideally, when they have the opportunity, they also amplify, creating a lovely space where people feel safe to speak up when they have something to say. I think it's important to note that even though some of these things seem really small, every time you find an effective way of having influence, pursuing your goal, speaking up, you have a ripple effect. It draws attention to the situation. It shows other people what's possible. And so women are able to slowly, sometimes a little bit more quickly, but at least slowly, we can start having an impact on how people see us, what they expect, what's acceptable, and then what we're able to do. So the takeaways for this: speaking up is a risk worth taking strategically. Before you lean in, ask, what resources do I need? And then remember, you aren't alone. Powering your voice isn't about speaking up more. It's about speaking when it matters, and then creating spaces where voices are heard. And that is it. Thank you very much.
All right. Well, we are almost to the end of our program, and at the end, run out to grab lunch, mix, and mingle. Thank you, Kristen, for that wonderful presentation. And as we close the 16th Annual Power Your Potential Conference, I hope you leave today not only inspired, but equipped with new ideas, new connections, and renewed confidence in your voice and your leadership. Today was about rising together, about learning from women who are leading boldly in their fields. Just as Dr. Kelly Monahan said, redesign work for learning, not efficiency. As Jenna Sadu said, never forget the human element in all things. Get familiar with new tools. They are helpful. Use it. Jackie Nicholson, gather your personal board, the ones that aren't afraid to tell you like it is. Lauren Tamburo, nothing is impossible. Know your skill and show your skill. Call folks up and present your resume. They may have been looking for you. Robin Brookhart, rewire how we view roles and who occupies them. Dr. Mary Dumbovi, find the whole and build what doesn't exist. Collaboration, I added this one, is queen. It's not always king. And Dr. Kristen Bain, culture is defined by the worst tolerated behavior. Speak up and know how to do it well. It was such an honor and a pleasure to be your mistress of ceremonies today. I would like to thank the Saunders College of Business, the Power Your Potential Planning Committee, Catering and Facilities, the media and tech team for having me, and most importantly, I thank all of you in the room for who you are and who you are becoming, because who you are becoming paves the way for me, the person next to you, and those to come. Now, we shall bring to the stage Dean Mosrall.
Thank you, Crystal, and thank you for serving as our mistress of ceremonies. Wow, this is great. I think many of you know we completed this expansion a couple years ago, and this is what we envisioned. We envisioned a place where people could engage, where people could come from so many different places, so many different perspectives and experiences, and participate and engage together. So thank you all for being here, and thank you for engaging with us because you made the event better. I also want to thank our rock star group of speakers and panelists, truly engaging. And as I said, special thanks to you, Crystal, for keeping us on track and moving us forward. So I'm going to make my remarks really short because I know I stand between you and lunch. But certainly, Saunders College of Business is dedicated to the advancement of women. So again, another reason why it's so exciting to see this room full with engaging and talented women. I will just do a shameless plug that if you want to continue learning, we have a full portfolio of programs at the undergraduate level, at the graduate level, where you could continue to be exposed to awesome faculty like Kristen Bain, who you just saw. In addition to our undergraduate and graduate programs, we have an EMBA, an executive MBA program, which is highly regarded in the nation. And it's really unique in the learning. It's a cohort-based program where you are with a group of working professionals in an executive style, both online and hybrid. So today, we are kicking off our 4th annual Women's Weekend, with Power Your Potential being the leading anchor for this. Tomorrow, led by some of our talented women students, we'll be having our Leadership Academy, or the Leadership Academy will be leading our Women's Leadership Summit, which aims to connect women and allies and alumni with high school and college students. So, so this kicks us off, and then that brings us through the weekend. So I want to thank all of you for participating and engaging in these activities. Some of our best learning, as we heard today from some of our speakers, begins by engagement and getting out of our comfort zones. So I'm glad that this conference was a platform for that, and you were able to engage and get out of your comfort zones. I'm certainly honored to be a part of this event as we prepare to celebrate Women's History Month, which is in March. So it's a perfect time to kick this off. And finally, this event wouldn't be possible without the work of a great team. Certainly our panelists and speakers were amazing, but there were so many people behind the scenes that helped to make today possible, including Karen Humbert, Patty Phillips, Molly McGowan, Aisha Fike, Sandy Whitmore, I saw you, Liam Welch, David Martin, Emily Sanchez, Leah Giassi, and of course the whole thing coordinated by our own Gabby Palmer. So let's say thanks to all of them. But having this large group of diverse women helping to plan this event makes it a better event. They search the Rochester community and beyond and really bring an amazing group of women together to engage with us. Okay, so we're almost ready for lunch. Just one more thing that we need to do. And Leah, are you doing this for us, or is Emily? Okay. We have to select a winner for our gift basket giveaway. And Gabby's got the gift basket. Am I choosing? Yeah. Wow, that's a lot of pressure. Jessica Hishman. Yeah, come on down. So this concludes the formal portion of our 16th annual Power Your Potential Conference. I know that we will see some of you tomorrow at the Women's Leadership Summit, and hopefully we see some of you again next year at this Power Your Potential Conference, which will be Friday, February 26th, 2027, as we continue to rise together. So please continue to engage and network as you enjoy your Power Bowl lunch. Have a great day.